Black and White, by Liu Jiming. Translated by Chen Gang. Volume 4, Chapter 1, County Town. After Wang Sheng graduated from Dongjiang University with a master's degree in Chinese, he was assigned to work at the Provincial Federation of Literary and Art Circles. On the day he reported to the Federation, the director of the personnel department came to talk to him. The director's surname was Huang, a middle-aged woman with a Hunan accent. She couldn't distinguish between Hu and Fu. She was very kind and spoke as if she was chatting with her family. She also brewed a cup of water and handed it to Wang Sheng. Wang Sheng, who was originally a little nervous, relaxed a lot and couldn't wait to ask, "Director, when do I start work?" "No hurry, no hurry," Director Huang smiled and said, "According to the spirit of the higher-level organization department, you should first go to the grassroots to train." "Go to the grassroots to train?" Wang Sheng was stunned. "How long?" Director Huang said, "It will take 1 to 2 years. Based on your personal performance, we will decide when you can return to your original unit." Wang Sheng had never heard of the rule that college graduates should go to the grassroots. Was it because I participated in the student movement that I was investigated? He knew that although he hadn't been punished, the school had assessed each student's performance in the student movement upon graduation. Thinking of this, he couldn't help asking, "Is this rule for all graduates or just me?" After saying this, Wang Sheng immediately realized that he was too abrupt, but the words spoken were like water spilled and could not be taken back. Fortunately, Director Huang did not mind and patiently explained, "This is not aimed at you alone. The Provincial Party Committee Organization Department and the Education Commission issued this new regulation. It is to cultivate the needs of the majority of young students." Wang Sheng was initially pleased to be assigned to the Provincial Federation of Literary and Art Circles, but after hearing what Director Huang said, he felt disappointed. He never expected that the next day after he reported to the Provincial Federation of Literary and Art Circles, he would go to the grassroots for training before starting work. The place where Wang Sheng trained was Niangzhou County Normal School. Niangzhou County is located in the western suburbs of Dajiang City. The county town is less than 100 kilometers away from the urban area. It borders Chuzhou City. The Dongjiang River is mighty and winding, facing the Pigu Mountains across the river. From the map, Niangzhou County is half hilly and half plain. The territory is lush with trees, rich in vegetation, and crisscrossed with waters. It is known as the back garden of the river. Niangzhou Lake, located in the southern part of the county, is the largest freshwater lake in terms of water storage capacity and the second largest in area in Dongjiang Province. Niangzhou Lake produces fish such as mullet, silverfish, silver needlefish, boatnail fish, mandarin fish, bighead carp, eel, and hairy crab. It is the most essential aquatic supply base in Dongjiang Province. In addition, the water quality of Niangzhou Lake is pure and pollution-free. Fish swim underwater, eagles fly in the sky, reeds flutter, islands overlap, lakes and mountains are connected, and water and sky are connected. It is like a piece of beautiful jade, and the scenery is breathtaking. Niangzhou County is located on the edge of Niangzhou Lake and has a population of less than 100,000. Apart from urban residents mainly engaged in business and work, the rest of the non-urban population makes a living by farming and fishing. The fish, shrimp, and other aquatic resources caught from Niangzhou Lake are sold in the county's aquatic product trading market to the provincial capital, Dajiang City, and other parts of the province. The county town is not big, with only 2 main streets, Jianxi Road and Jifang Road, which are connected by alleys like a string of candied haws. The alleys are as winding as earthworms and as dense as spider webs, weaving the details of people's lives. They are the most sensitive nerve endings of the county town. By the end of the 1980s, most of the buildings in Niangzhou County were traditional brick and wood structures, neither Chinese nor Western, neither local nor foreign. There were not many buildings above 3 floors. It was naturally more than 1 level lower than the provincial capital with tall buildings. The streets in the county town are of different widths. Due to the lack of planning, they are a bit messy. The road surface is bumpy. Some are paved with cement, and some are paved with coal slag. Every sunny day, dust and coal ash fly together. The rain brings a choking smell of coal ash and aquatic products. The sewerage facilities in the county town are elementary. During the plum rain season, the water of Niangzhu Lake backflows, and most of the low-lying roads and residential areas in the county town are filled with sewage, making it impossible for pedestrians and vehicles to pass. It was not until the early 1990s that the situation was genuinely improved after the Urban Construction Department carried out a comprehensive upgrade and renovation of the county's sewer network. Jifang Road is the political and cultural center of Niangzhu County. The County Party Committee and government, the Finance Bureau, the Public Security Bureau, the Bank, the Health Bureau, the Foreign Trade Bureau, the Taxation Bureau, and other administrative units are all located on this street. On another main street, Jianxi Road, are department stores, cinemas, the County People's Hospital, the Cultural Bureau, the library, the Xinhua Bookstore, and the Cultural Center. In comparison, Jianxi Road is much more lively than Jifang Road. The cinema is located at the intersection of Jifang Road and Jianxi Road. Opposite it is the department store. Both buildings were built in the 1970s and are typical of the 1970s style. There is a huge placard at the main entrance of the cinema engraved with Chairman Mao's quotations. "Let 100 flowers bloom, let 100 schools of thought contend." And on the street-facing wall of the department store across the street from the cinema is also engraved a quotation from Chairman Mao: "Develop the economy, ensure supply." The cinema and the department store are the tallest and most modern buildings in the county, and they meet the material, spiritual, and cultural needs of the people of the county, becoming the undisputed center of the county. Popular clothing and other daily necessities in Dajiang City often appear in the county for the first time, including some of the latest movies, which are mostly screened simultaneously, with a maximum difference of 2 or 3 days. On the day Wang Sheng registered at the Niangzhu Normal School, he went to the department store to buy daily necessities and watched the movie Red Dust in the cinema. Taiwanese female writer San Mao adapted the novel into this movie. Just a few days before Wang Sheng left Dongda, short for Dongjiang University, the school's open-air cinema had just screened it. After watching Red Dust, Wang Sheng also wrote a 1,000-word short review and submitted it to the Dajiang Literature and Art supplement of the provincial newspaper for publication. The editor of the supplement was Hu Xiangyang, a graduate student classmate of Dongda who was 1 year older than Wang Sheng. He had asked him to contribute to the article. That afternoon, Wang Sheng came out of the department store after shopping and walked to the cinema opposite. He saw the enormous portraits of Lin Qingxia and Qin Han, who played the male and female protagonists on the poster. He couldn't resist the temptation and watched Red Dust again. He bought a ticket at the crowded ticket window. There was still more than half an hour before the showtime, and Wang Sheng strolled on the side of the road for a while. The cinema entrance was bustling with people, as lively as a trade market. Various snack stalls lined up along the road, filling the cinema entrance. The vendors kept shouting with their local accents, attracting many people waiting to watch the movie. Even Wang Sheng, who rarely likes snacks, couldn't resist the temptation and went over to buy half a caddy of water chestnuts. The water chestnuts, obviously freshly caught from Niangzhu Lake, still had water droplets. After peeling off the ochre-red shell, the water chestnut meat inside was white, tender, crisp, and sweet. Freshwater chestnuts can only be eaten in the county town near Niangzhu Lake. Wang Sheng ate water chestnuts while watching the movie in the cinema. Nearly 2 hours passed unknowingly. It was already dark when he saw the words "The End" appear on the screen and followed the tide of audiences out of the cinema. The streetlights on the street were far less bright and dazzling than those in the provincial capital. They were dim like fireflies. After all, it was just a small county town. Although the shops along the street were next to each other, they were unlike the shops in the provincial capital, where every shop was equipped with neon lights. The more night fell, the more prosperous and noisier it became. As soon as it got dark, few pedestrians were on the street. It was about 2 kilometers from the cinema to Niangzhou Normal School. Wang Sheng took a rickshaw when he entered the city, but he did not call a taxi this time and walked back slowly along Jianxi Road. The street lamp cast his shadow on the road, which was sometimes long and sometimes short, sometimes fat and occasionally thin like a piece of dough being kneaded, or like looking at a funhouse mirror, a little weird and a little lonely. Thinking that he would start his life in this small county town from now on, Wang Sheng felt melancholy, but also had some expectations in his heart. Normal School. Niangzhou Normal School is in the northwest of the county. Its predecessor was the Niangzhou County Workers and Peasants Cadres Training School. When the Cadres School opened in the early 1950s, it mainly held some short-term cultural crash courses to train workers and peasants cadres. In 1958, during the Great Leap Forward, the state changed the Cadres School into a normal school to vigorously develop rural education, which became a regular secondary normal school. In addition to transferring teachers from various county middle schools, the province assigned some teachers from its normal colleges. After graduation, most students began teaching in rural primary schools. Some became cadres in the cultural and educational system, but only a few. The Workers and Peasants Cadre School used to be located on Jifang Road in the county town, with only 2 rows of purple-tiled bungalows. After converting into a normal school, the school expanded its enrollment and significantly increased its teaching staff. The original school building was no longer sufficient, so it moved from the county town to its current location. The new school site used to be a mass burial ground. Before 1949, the poor had no money to buy a grave or coffin after death, so they just wrapped in reed mats and dug a hole in a mass grave to bury the dead. The shallow burial of the corpses attracted groups of wild dogs. To dig the bones, the wild dogs often fought each other. The barking of dogs could be heard far away, and it was creepy to hear at night. The countryside launched a large-scale land leveling movement during the Great Leap Forward. The members of the county vegetable team flattened the mass graves, transforming them into fertile farmland. They built a new school building soon after the Niangzhou Normal School moved in. In less than half a year, they erected rows of neat, tall, red brick houses on the former mass graves and vegetable fields. This was typical Great Leap Forward speed. In the early 1970s, there was a nationwide upsurge in the establishment of the Communist Labor University, or Gongda for short, and Niangzhou Normal School also added a Gongda signboard. In addition to continuing to recruit ordinary students from middle schools, it also began to recruit more workers and peasants. As a result, the original school building was insufficient, so the Niangzhou County Education Bureau applied for special funds from the province to build a new teaching and office building. This building had 4 floors and was the largest in Niangzhou County. After the school moved classrooms and offices into the new building, they used the vacated old house as a library and faculty/staff dormitory. The teaching, office, and living conditions of Niangzhou Normal School were significantly improved. Niangzhou Normal School was a school without walls. In front of it was the Kangzhuang Canal, which runs across Niangzhou County. They built the Kangzhuang Canal in the mid-1970s, and it was the province's most famous water conservancy project during the Cultural Revolution. When it was completed, it was on the front page of the Dongjiang Daily and was called the Red Flag Canal of Niangzhou County. When the Kangzhuang Canal was first built, the water in the canal was as clear and clean as Niangzhou Lake, without any impurities, and people's shadows could be seen in the water. When passers-by were tired and thirsty, they would scoop a handful of water from the canal and pour it on their faces. They would feel refreshed as if they had applied cooling oil. A sip of it was sweet and could quench their thirst and relieve fatigue. Wang Sheng began his teacher training at the Niangzhou Normal School in the early 1990s. Kangzhuang Canal was no longer what it used to be. The water conservancy drainage and irrigation system at the lake mouth, Kangzhuang Gate, had long lost its drainage function due to accumulated silt blocking it. The Kangzhuang Canal, which once brought water from Niangzhu Lake to thousands of hectares of fertile fields in the county, had become a dead canal. Due to the continuous sewage discharge by factories along the way, the water in the canal became increasingly turbid. It could not be drunk directly. Even if it was boiled and drunk, it had a bitter taste. The canal was much narrower than before. The water was black and exuded a foul smell of dead fish, rotten shrimp, and silt. This canal, which once irrigated more than half of the farmland in Niangzhu County, had changed beyond recognition. Behind Niangzhu Normal School was a large farmland area that originally belonged to the county's vegetable team. In the planned economy era, not only those large and medium-sized cities with populations of hundreds or millions, but even small counties with a population of less than 100,000 had their vegetable supply bases. The vegetable team in Niangzhu County has 3 teams responsible for supplying vegetables to nearly 100,000 residents in the county. After implementing the contract system, the vegetable team, the smallest production unit, was disbanded. Vegetable farmers no longer had the administrative task of supplying vegetables to the county. According to the market price, they sold vegetables wherever the price was high. Because the price of vegetables was low, they could not make much money. The price of fish was much higher than that of vegetables, so some vegetable farmers changed their careers to fishing in Niangzhu Lake, leaving a lot of land uncultivated. The Normal College originally had more than 10 acres of land, growing vegetables for the school cafeteria. Not only were the prices cheap, but they were also pollution-free and pesticide-free. However, as Normal College continued to expand its enrollment in recent years, the school's vegetables could no longer meet the canteen's needs, so it took over the abandoned farmland to grow vegetables to alleviate the canteen's vegetable crisis. For this reason, the school had a not-so-small dispute with the vegetable farmers, which was not resolved until the county government stepped in. The Normal School assigned Wang Sheng a dormitory in the row of bungalows on the north side of the campus. Although it was an old house built in the 1950s, with damaged doors, windows, and walls, and the roof covered with unkempt weeds, at night, one could often hear mice running around between the rafters, making squeaking sounds that made one's scalp tingle. Still, he lived in a single room, and outside the window was an unobstructed view of farmland, a broad field of vision, fresh air, and an intense pastoral scenery. Wang Sheng felt delighted. During Wang Sheng's first semester of training at the Normal School, the school did not assign him any classes, which allowed him to have a lot of free time. He stayed in the dormitory every day reading books, and after he finished reading the half box of books he brought with him when he graduated, he went to the school library to borrow books. The school library was just opposite Wang Sheng's dormitory. It was also an old-fashioned bungalow with white walls and black tiles. It had 5 large rooms in a row. The area was not small, but the collection of books was minimal. Compared with the library of Dongjiang University was simply a small witch compared to a big witch. Teaching materials comprised most of the books. In his eyes, there were really few books worth reading. Wang Sheng, who loved books, turned his attention to the county library. The Niangzhu County Library and the Cultural Center have 4 floors in the same building. The first floor is a roller skating rink, the second floor is the Cultural Center's office, and the third floor is 2 classrooms with various training courses in music, art, calligraphy, literature, etc. The library is on the 4th floor. It does not have more books than the Normal School library. Still, the collection is vibrant, including many books about local humanities, history, geography, and customs, especially the 2 editions of the Niangzhu County Chronicles in the Kangxi period of the Qing dynasty and the Republic of China, which made Wang Sheng feel like he had found a treasure. When Wang Sheng was a graduate student, he consulted a lot of literature and history materials to write his graduation thesis. He gradually developed an interest in literature and history books. His writing also shifted from literary criticism to literature and history research, and this kind of writing especially requires the effort of combing through historical materials, reading a wide range of books, and sitting on the bench. During that time, Wang Sheng went to the county library to read books almost every day, from morning to night, and he was diligent. Lunch was also the steamed buns he brought from the school cafeteria in the morning. Because he was entirely focused, Wang Sheng often turned a deaf ear to the noise coming from the roller skating rink on the first floor. When it was time to get off work, the librarian came over and gently reminded him, "Young man, it's time to get off work. Come back tomorrow." He woke up from his dream and reluctantly closed the book. The librarian was a small, middle-aged woman. One day at noon, she saw Wang Sheng reading a book while eating cold, steamed buns. She poured him a cup of water and said with concern, "Young man, eating cold, steamed buns all the time will easily cause stomach problems. Drink some water." Wang Sheng looked at the kind-looking female librarian and felt warm in his heart. Since then, the two had become familiar with each other. The female librarian's surname was Liu, and her daughter was studying in the library science department at Dongjiang University, where she just graduated last year. Out of respect, Wang Sheng calls her Teacher Liu. When she heard that Wang Sheng was a graduate student of Dongjiang University and was assigned to teach at the normal school, she seemed a little surprised. Students from Dongjiang University are rarely assigned to our Niangzhou County. Undergraduates are rare, let alone graduate students. She said half-doubtfully, "There were some during the Cultural Revolution, but those were all worker-peasant-soldier students." Fatsing her suspicious look, Wang Sheng didn't know what to say for a moment, so he asked, "Teacher Liu, where does your daughter work?" "My daughter studied library science and received an assignment to work as an administrator at the provincial library." Wang Sheng heard an undisguised pride in Teacher Liu's tone, so he just said, "Oh," twice, lowered his head silently and continued reading. Probably because Wang Sheng and his daughter were schoolmates, Teacher Liu was very concerned about him. Not only did she provide him with free boiled water at noon every day, but she also made an exception and allowed him to borrow the 2 volumes of Niangzhou County Chronicles considered treasures of the museum to read. Thanks to these 2 volumes of Niangzhou County Chronicles, Wang Sheng, who had no classes throughout the semester, had a particularly fulfilling time. 3. Community Teacher Class. In the second semester, Wang Sheng served as the head teacher of the Community Teacher Class. The Community Teacher Class was the full name of the county-wide Community to Public Rural Teacher Training Class, jointly organized by the Niangzhou County Education Bureau and the County Normal School. The Niangzhou County Education Bureau and the County Normal School selected students from rural primary schools across the county for the Community Teacher Class. Before that, they had passed the Community to Public examination. In other words, although they were still teaching in rural primary schools, their status was already a public teacher who received a national salary every month. In the past few years, the State Education Commission considered the uneven quality of these former community teachers. It required the county-level education departments and regular schools to set up special classes to train them in phases and batches, with the funds allocated uniformly by the national and provincial finances. The community teacher class of Niangzhou County Normal School opened earlier in the province, and this year is the 3rd session. The school surprised Wang Sheng by asking him to be the head teacher of the class. As far as he knew, the head teachers of the class were all senior teachers with long teaching experience. He was just assigned to the regular school for training, and he had just graduated from the school and had never taught a class. He was a little worried that he was not qualified. The principal even called him to the office for a talk. The principal's surname was Bao. He was a graduate of Dongjiang Normal College before the Cultural Revolution. He was tall and thin, and his head and face also looked thin and long. He looked like a piece of stretched dough or plasticine. When Wang Sheng first met him, he couldn't help but think of the characters in the comic strips of Shi Dawei, a painter he liked when he was a child. They always had a stern face and looked particularly serious, but the more so, the funnier they looked. Principal Bao spoke very slowly, word by word, and often made mistakes in punctuation. A complete sentence became fragmented in his mouth, making it difficult for people to understand what he was saying. However, Principal Bao was usually very kind to people, especially to Wang Sheng. Principal Bao attaches great importance to academics and their background. When Wang Sheng first met him, he heard him say that they were the only two people in the school who had graduated from a prestigious university, and as for the others, there are not many regular college students. His meaning was very similar to that of Cao Cao, who said to Liu Xuande, "The only heroes in the world are you and me," when they were drinking wine and discussing heroes in Romance of the Three Kingdoms. Teacher Wang, don't underestimate this class teacher. Each year, the special funds allocated to the province and county's community teacher class account for over 30% of the entire school. If he fails the graduation assessment, you, as the class teacher, and I, as the principal, will have difficulty reporting to the higher-ups. Principal Bao's words made Wang Sheng feel he was not qualified as a class teacher. Principal, I just started working and lack experience and ability. Should you choose someone better? Principal Bao originally wanted to show his trust and respect for Wang Sheng, but when he heard that Wang Sheng seemed to give up, he changed his tone and said tactfully, "Teacher Wang, I have learned about your situation. Before you studied for a master's degree at Dongjiang University, you studied for a junior college at Chuzhou Teachers College. Teaching is your major. How can you say you have no experience? But do you have any concerns? You were active during the student movement, but what's the big deal? The organization didn't punish you. Besides, I proposed that you be the head teacher of the community teacher class to give you a chance to train yourself." Principal Bao lowered his voice and said, "What are you worried about? Are you reluctant to be assigned to the grassroots to train yourself?" Wang Sheng quickly shook his head and said, "Principal Bao, that's not what I meant." "I know what you mean." Principal Bao smiled sympathetically. "They assigned me from Dongjiang Normal College to such a small Niangzhou Normal School, and I was also confused." Principal Bao's frank tone pushed Wang Sheng to the wall, leaving him no room for maneuver. If he answered yes, it would be like admitting that he looked down on the small Niangzhou Normal School, and looking down on Niangzhou Normal School was tantamount to looking down on Principal Bao himself. If he answered no, he would have no choice but to accept the position of class teacher. Wang Sheng didn't want to make things too awkward with his leader, so he had to choose the latter. On the day when the community teacher training class started, they held a brief opening ceremony. Not only did Principal Bao attend in person, but the County Education Bureau also sent Chief Zeng from the General Education Department, a short, fat man with a full beard who looked only a few years older than Wang Sheng. Principal Bao and Chief Zeng each made an important speech, the contents of which were similar, discussing how the party and the government valued rural education and the community-to-public teacher training class. Finally, Principal Bao introduced Wang Sheng. The head teacher of this year's community teacher class, Teacher Wang Sheng, is a postgraduate in the Chinese department of Dongjiang University who has been sent to our school for training. Teacher Wang is a great talent. He has published many articles during his time at university. This time, the school has arranged for him to be the homeroom teacher and Chinese language teacher, which fully reflects the school leadership's high regard for this year's community teacher class, and also reflects the school's trust in Teacher Wang. At the same time, this is a test for Teacher Wang. Now please welcome Teacher Wang to speak with warm applause. Wang Sheng sat in the first row of the classroom. He stood up quickly, bowed to Principal Bao, and turned to nod to the students. Before the opening ceremony, Principal Bao had asked him to say a few words, but now, facing the students in the classroom who were mostly older than him, he was very nervous. His face flushed, his lips moved, and he forgot the prepared speech for a moment, and finally said nothing. This is how Wang Sheng's career as a class teacher began. The Niangzhou County Education Bureau originally approved 50 students for the community teacher class. Still, when the school was about to start, one student could not attend due to illness, so the actual number of students in the class was only 49, including 34 male students and 15 female students, with a male-to-female ratio of about 3 to 1. The oldest was 51 years old, and the youngest was 19 years old. 27 people graduated from high school, 22 graduated from junior high school and elementary school, 41 were married, and 8 were unmarried. For several days after the start of the school year, Wang Sheng was thinking about the roster of the community teacher class. As a class teacher, he first needed to be familiar with every student, including their family, personal resume, physical condition, work performance, and personality. But this was only the first step. As a class teacher, the most essential thing was truly understanding his students. To achieve this, even memorizing the roster by heart was not enough. This was not the first time that Wang Sheng had been a class teacher. While studying at Chuzhou Teachers College, he once interned at a middle school in the suburbs and served as a class teacher for the first high school grade for half a semester. The difference is that at that time, he was facing a group of underage middle school students, while now he is facing a group of adults with varying ages and qualities. The difference between the two is too significant. Wang Sheng was a serious person. Since he had accepted the school's arrangement, he should have been a good class teacher with all his heart and energy, and he could not be careless. Wang Sheng knew that the community teacher class differed from the ordinary class of the regular school. The students had very complicated needs. If he wanted to lead this class well, he must know every aspect of the students. To this end, he took the roster and went to the Student Affairs office to review the students' files one by one, with more diligence than when he was preparing his master's thesis. Despite this, Wang Sheng did not know whether he understood these community teachers who had just been converted to public status. Community teachers were a special group of Chinese teaching staff. They first came into being with the founding of New China, but they appeared in large numbers in the 1970s. Due to the popularization of primary and secondary schools in rural areas, many production brigades had junior high schools, and those with the means even ran high schools. There was a shortage of teachers, and many rural high school, junior high school, and even upper primary school, higher grades of primary school, graduates took to the podium and joined the ranks of community teachers. During this period, there were as many as 4.712 million community teachers in China, accounting for 56% of the total number of primary and secondary school teachers in the country. Wang Sheng's first understanding of community teachers came from a novel called Phoenix Lute, which described the lives of community teachers. They adapted the story into a movie, and Wang Sheng even wrote a review. Now he went to the school library to find Phoenix Lute and read it from beginning to end. Suddenly, an idea came to his mind. Can we organize the students of the community teacher class to watch a movie adapted from Phoenix Lute? Principal Bao, who sent someone to the county film projection company to retrieve the videotape of the Phoenix Lute, supported Wang Sheng's idea. They showed the movie in the computer classroom. All the students in the class were present. To show their support for the class and the head teacher Wang Sheng, Principal Bao also came. When the film reached the scene where the teachers and students of Jiling Elementary School lowered the flag to mourn the death of Principal Yu's wife, Teacher Ming Ifan, Wang Sheng heard a low sob in the audio-visual classroom. Even Principal Bao, sitting next to him, took out a handkerchief to wipe his eyes. After the movie, Wang Sheng assigned an extracurricular assignment, asking each student to write a review of the Phoenix Lute based on their own experience and submit it within a week. Wang Sheng's original intention and purpose of arranging this movie was to gain a deeper understanding of the inner state and spiritual world of the students in the community teacher class through watching the movie and writing reviews. The students responded very positively. Some handed their compositions to him the next day. In less than a week, all the students in the class had completed this homework. It took Wang Sheng 3 full days to finish reading the assignments handed in by the students. The Phoenix Lute reflects the life of community teachers, and it easily resonates with them. Reviewers wrote most reviews in a plain, sincere, and touching manner. Among them, Wang Sheng noticed an essay, The Old Principal, watching the movie The Phoenix Lute. After reading this short essay of less than 1,000 words, he felt the student's something touched his heart. The author used simple and concise language to portray the image of a rural elementary school, old principal, so truly, vividly, and lifelike. He stared at the student's name at the end of the article, searching his mind for the 49 students he had already become familiar with on the community teacher class roster. The face of a female student vaguely appeared before his eyes. The girl's name is Tian Fang. 4. Language class. In the Chinese class next week, Wang Sheng spent the entire class reviewing the students' movie-watching assignments, and he particularly mentioned Tian Fang's composition, The Old Principal. This is not a simple film review. It can be said that the author's focus is not on the movie Phoenix Loot itself. Still, through this topic, he portrays the touching image of a rural primary school principal and also writes about the unknown hardships and dedication of community teachers. After Wang Sheng made a concise comment on the old principal, he raised his voice slightly and said, "Now let's ask Tian Fang to recite this composition to everyone." After saying that, Wang Sheng turned his eyes to the classroom. Although he had carefully checked the files of the community teacher class and had a basic understanding of the students, there were 49 students in the class after all, and Wang Sheng could not match each person's name with their own. The same was true for Tian Fang. Apart from the unclear 2-inch black and white photo in the student file, he had almost no impression of this female student. At this moment, when he stood on the podium, facing the unfamiliar faces in the classroom, it was not easy to find Tian Fang immediately. "Student Tian Fang, please come to the podium and share your composition with your classmates." Wang Sheng glanced back and forth in the classroom and repeated what he had just said. No one responded. Some students looked up and around, while others whispered to their neighbors, and a buzzing sound filled the classroom. Wang Sheng waited for a while and asked a boy sitting in the front row, "Class leader Geng, classmate Tian Fang, is she here?" Class monitor Geng's name was Geng Chunlai. Before entering the community teacher class, he was the principal of Fengshuan Elementary School in the suburbs. He was in his 30s, with a square face and a sturdy body, looking very mature, much older than his actual age. Geng Chunlai was one of the 3 Communist Party members in the class and a member of the Fengshuan Party branch. The school had designated him as the Student Party branch secretary and class monitor of this year's community teacher class. When Monitor Geng saw Wang Sheng asking him, he didn't answer immediately. Turning his head, he looked towards the classroom, muttering, "Come on, aren't you sitting in the back row?" Then he raised his voice and called out, "Tian Fang, Teacher Wang called you. Why didn't you answer?" At this moment, Wang Sheng saw a girl standing up from the back of the classroom. She was about 1.6 meters tall, with curved eyebrows, rosy cheeks, neat bangs, 2 black pigtails hanging behind her head, and a printed cloth top with a blue background, white flowers, and gold embroidery. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, her face was red, and she looked a little nervous and flustered as if she was criticized instead of being praised by the teacher. "Tian Fang, Teacher Wang asked you to go to the podium and recite your composition," class leader Geng reminded impatiently. Wang Sheng waved to Monitor Geng, picked up the essay from the podium, walked through the aisle between the desks, and came to Tian Fang in the last row. He asked in a questioning tone, "Tian Fang, are you willing to recite it to everyone?" Tian Fang raised her head timidly without saying anything. Because of nervousness, beads of sweat appeared on her forehead. Wang Sheng saw this and turned to all the students, saying, "Everyone, applaud and encourage Tian Fang." Then a burst of applause broke out in the classroom. This made Tian Fang's face even redder, but she was encouraged. She took her composition from Wang Sheng and looked through it. There were only 2 thin pages, but she read it very seriously, as if the composition was not written by her but by someone else. When Wang Sheng returned to the podium and just stood there, Tian Fang's voice began to be heard. At first, Tian Fang's voice was very soft and minor stuttering, mixed with a local accent, so it was not very clear, but gradually it became fluent. Like most students in the class, her Mandarin was not very standard, but the tone was very nice, crisp and euphemistic, like the chirping of birds in the bamboo forest or the gurgling stream in the mountains. Old principal. My thoughts after watching the movie Phoenix Loot. After watching Phoenix Loot, my first feeling was that this movie was about our school. Our school is located on Phoenix Island in Niangzhu Lake. There are only 3 teachers, including the old principal. The old principal has been a community teacher for most of his life and has not yet been transferred to a public school. In the movie, 3 teachers teach 5 or 6 grades, and 3 grades are in class together. This is also the case in our school. During the busy farming season, the school is closed, and teachers and students go home to help their parents with work. The school has only 1 ping pong table, which is made of cement, with a missing corner and no net. When students play, they use bricks as a net. Although the conditions are simple, the students have a lot of fun. One student participated in the township sports competition and won the runner-up in the ping pong competition. Just like in the Phoenix Loot, our school raises the national flag every morning before class. At first, the school did not have a flagpole, so the old principal cut bamboo from the bamboo forest behind the campus to use as a flagpole. Every time the national flag was raised, the old principal dressed neatly, stood straight facing the rising national flag, and led the students to sing the national anthem. His voice was hoarse, like a broken gong, but he sang very seriously with a solemn expression. The old principal is over 50 years old. He has never married or had children. He lives and eats in the school. He has devoted most of his life to the island's education for decades. Everyone on the island who has studied for a few years respects him. Whenever there are weddings or funerals on the island, they are willing to invite him to preside over them. The old principal has a harmonica. When he is free, he often plays music. Every time the school holds cultural and entertainment activities, the old principal's harmonica performance is a reserved program. The songs he often plays include Horse Please Go Slowly, Whip the Horse to Transport Grain, and Liu Yang River, etc. They are all old songs, but the students like them very much. After the old principal plays a song, everyone will shout, "One more song," like a jerk. Every time this happens, the old principal's face will be full of smiles, and he will happily say, "One more song." That was the happiest time for the old principal. In primary school, the old principal was my enlightenment teacher. The old principal became my leader when I became a glorious community teacher. When I passed the public school teacher exam, the old principal congratulated me, but I was worried because I felt that the old principal should be the most qualified to transfer to the public, but he always gave the recruitment quota to young teachers. Several teachers in our school left the school to work outside the island after transferring to the public, and he is the only one who has stayed on the island until now. When I came to the community teacher training class, the old principal sent me to the lakeside dock. He kept smoking on the way and didn't say a word, but I knew what he was thinking. There were only 3 teachers in the school. After I left, there were only 2 teachers left, and the burden on their shoulders became heavier. After graduating from the community teacher training class, the old principal hoped I could return to the island. Many young and middle-aged people on the island have gone out to work, leaving their children on the island. If the primary school is closed due to a lack of teachers, they will drop out, affecting the children's future prospects. After reading Phoenix Loot, the first thing that came to my mind was the scene when the old principal saw me off. The boat was almost in the lake's center that day, and the old principal was still standing at the dock. The lonely figure looked like a big question mark from afar. After Tian Fang finished reciting, the classroom was silent. Everyone was moved, including Wang Sheng. In his eyes, Tian Fang, standing in the back row of the classroom, was like a mimosa in the mountains, so simple, elegant, and peaceful. Almost a minute later, Wang Sheng retracted his gaze. I don't know who started it, but a warm applause rang out in the classroom, like spring thunder rolling past everyone's ears. At that moment, Wang Sheng felt that his heart was beating with the whole class, becoming an inseparable whole. Wang Sheng realized that the usual praise was unnecessary at this moment, so he proposed, "Classmates, I propose that Tian Fang be the Chinese class representative. Do you agree or not?" Everyone agreed in unison. Tian Fang's face turned even redder, and she stammered, "Teacher, I can't be the class representative." Before Tian Fang finished speaking, someone shouted, "Tian Fang, your composition is so good. Who else can be yours?" "Yes, Tian Fang, you are the Chinese class representative, so don't be so modest." Faced with everyone's enthusiasm and trust, Tian Fang bit her lip, remained silent for a moment, and said, "Teacher, classmates, I can't be a class representative, really." Her voice was not loud, but very firm. Wang Sheng and the students in the class were stunned. From that day on, Wang Sheng had a deep impression of Tian Fang. He was puzzled and curious about her almost stubborn refusal to serve as the Chinese class representative, and he always felt that there was some unknown reason behind it. For this reason, he especially talked to the class monitor, Geng Chunlai. "Class monitor Geng, what do you think about Tian Fang's unwillingness to be the class representative?" Wang Sheng asked, straight to the point. Geng Chunlai had been the principal of a private primary school for many years before attending the community teacher training class. After being admitted to the normal school, he was more casual in front of school leaders and teachers, especially in front of the head teacher, several years younger than him. At this moment, when he heard Wang Sheng asking about this, he spread his hands and said, "I am also puzzled by this. Others want to be the class representative but can't, but she is unwilling to do it. Have you known each other before?" "I can't say I know her. I met her once before during the civil service examination. She was the only one from Fenghuang Primary School taking the exam. Her score ranked among the top 3. Then I met her after I entered the community teacher class," Geng Chunlai said thoughtfully. "In our class, Tian Fang is the youngest and is also quite introverted and shy. She rarely speaks. It's not surprising for a girl like her." "Besides these, what else do you know?" Wang Sheng asked further. "Tian Fang's parents are both gone, and she has a brother who works outside. I heard from Chen, who is close to her, that her niece is also studying at Fenghuang Primary School and has been relying on her for care." Geng Chunlai said as he thought, "Tian Fang goes back to Fenghuang Island every weekend, more often than those of us who have families." As Wang Sheng listened to Geng Chunlai's story, Tian Fang's eyes, as clear as lake water and slightly melancholy, flashed through his mind again. Soon, Wang Sheng recommended Tian Fang's essay to be published in the school newspaper, for which he was the special editor. On the day of publication, he happened to have a Chinese class, so he took a few sample newspapers from the editorial office and brought them to the classroom. When the class started, he habitually looked towards the back row of the classroom but saw that Tian Fang's seat was empty. "Why didn't Tian Fang come to class today?" he asked Geng Chunlai, the monitor in the front row. "She asked for leave, saying something happened at home and returned yesterday," Geng Chun said as he handed over a leave application. Wang Sheng quickly glanced at the leave application and felt a sense of loss. When he started teaching, he was distracted. Tian Fang's request for leave stated that she would be on leave for 3 days, but after a week, she still hadn't returned to school. Wang Sheng felt a little uneasy. As the head teacher, he had an unshirkable responsibility for the study and life of every student in the class. After another 2 or 3 days, Tian Fang still did not return to school, so Wang Sheng decided to make a home visit. He wanted his class monitor, Geng Chunlai, to accompany him, but Geng Chunlai asked for leave to return home to work on spring farming, so he had to go to Phoenix Island alone. Before leaving, Wang Sheng did not forget to bring 2 school newspapers with Tian Fang's essays. 5. Home visits. Wang Sheng usually didn't pay much attention to his clothing, but this was his first home visit as a head class teacher, so he significantly changed into a new outfit, a black jacket on top, dark blue trousers on the bottom, and a pair of white high-top sneakers. This attire, including the black imitation leather shoulder bag he carried, was purchased from the county town's department store after Wang Sheng received his first month's salary. As the saying goes, clothes make the man, and a saddle makes the horse. After this dressing up, he looked energetic and transformed. It was March, with willows swaying and green grass on both sides of Kengzhuang Canal. It had just rained a little, and the weather was fresh, with blue sky and white clouds, and the wind was gentle and sunny. The canal leading to the county town and Niangzhu Lake was bustling with people, much more lively than usual. It was about 2 or 3 miles from Niangzhu Normal School to the lakeside pier, and Wang Sheng arrived there in a short while. There were more than a dozen islands in Niangzhu Lake, each with a ferry to the county town's dock, running several times a day depending on the size of the island and the number of passengers. Islands with more passengers had a boat every 2 hours, while those with fewer passengers had only 1 boat every half day. Although the ferries to each island varied in size, they were all of the same type. The driver's cabin was at the stern, and the front 2/3 was the passenger cabin with plastic seats and a military green canvas canopy overhead. There was a mooring point every 10 meters or so at the dock, with boats lined up one after another. Occasionally, a ship would set sail or dock with the din of voices and roaring engines. The passengers were islanders from various islands going to the county town to sell local produce and aquatic products. Each of them carried shoulder poles and baskets hurrying along. The entire dock looked like a bustling market. Wang Sheng had just walked to the dock when he caught a ferry to Phoenix Island. Since it was morning, many people were coming to the county town from various islands, but few people were returning to the island, so most of the seats on the ferry were still empty. Several women were sitting on a row of seats near the driving building. From the empty baskets on their shoulders, it could be seen that they were returning to the island after selling local products and seafood in the county town. They talked loudly together as if no one was around, and they laughed happily when they talked about something interesting. At this moment, when they saw Wang Sheng getting on the boat, they perhaps felt it was inappropriate to laugh and talk in front of strangers, and felt a little embarrassed, so they suddenly stopped talking. Wang Sheng had just sat down on the side of the boat when the ferry started moving. He took out a book from his bag as usual and read a few pages when he heard a whisper. "Guess what he does?" "Why would you guess? Didn't you see him reading a book? He looks so gentle and refined. He must be a college student." "Look at his clothes. How can a college student be so luxurious? I guess he is an official or a teacher. The cadres must come to our island to inspect the work. He looks handsome, but he's probably still single, right? What's the matter? Your husband is not at home, so you are feeling unlucky? You are not only a flower, but also a wild one." Then there was a burst of giggling. Wang Sheng could only roughly understand the dialect they spoke, but he knew the women were talking about him, so he looked away from the book and raised his head to see the women in the front seat of the driver's building, talking and laughing while fighting with each other. 2 of the young women blushed when they saw Wang Sheng looking at them and bowed their heads in silence. Wang Sheng couldn't help but blush. However, he became interested in these women, so he closed the book and said, "Ladies, are you from Phoenix Island?" The women didn't expect Wang Sheng to talk to them. They looked at each other and said nothing until Wang Sheng asked again. Then one of the young women who had just torn each other apart answered, "Yes, what do you do?" "Didn't you guess it just now?" Wang Shengcheng wanted to tease her and asked back. The woman who was talking was about the same age as Wang Sheng. She had dark skin but was pretty, like a beautiful black peony. She looked at people with squinted eyes, making her look naughty. Wang Sheng found that the skin of the other women was a little dark. Their long-term life and hard work on the lake might account for this. Thinking of this, Tian Fang's fair face suddenly flashed in his mind. Maybe Tian Fang is an exception? "We've made so many guesses. Which one is it?" Black Peony blinked. Wang Sheng smiled but didn't answer. "Let me ask you about someone." "Just ask. Phoenix Island is a little bigger than your palm. There's nothing I don't recognize." "Tian Fang, do you know her?" Are you asking about Teacher Tian from Fenghuang Primary School? Yes, that's her. Black Peony looked at Wang Sheng with eyes wide open and asked repeatedly, You came to the island just to look for Tian Fang? Who are you to her? I am Tian Fang's teacher. Wang Sheng's answer surprised Black Peony. Tian Fang is my child's teacher, and you are Tian Fang's teacher. So, you are a teacher at the normal school? She looked at Wang Sheng with her mouth wide open in surprise. Oh my God, then you must be much more knowledgeable than Teacher Tian. Wang Sheng felt a little embarrassed by Black Peony's infinite admiration. A middle-aged woman with freckles on her face next to Black Peony muttered, I heard that Tian Fang will not return to the island after finishing her studies at the normal school. Who told you that? I saw Tian Fang and the old principal having a class at school yesterday, someone immediately retorted. Several women were chattering like birds. Their accents differed from those of the people in the Niangzhou county town. They had more interjections, and their voices were musical, melodious, and like singing. They reminded Wang Sheng of the tone of Tian Fang's voice when she read aloud her composition. At this moment, the ferry has reached the center of Niangzhou Lake. The lake is rippling with blue waves, and flocks of gulls are like a disciplined and skilled guard of honor, following closely behind the ferry, constantly changing their agile postures and various formations, sometimes leaping up, sometimes diving down, accompanied by strong lake winds and shouting loudly and excitedly. The waves splashed by the ferry rushed towards us with a strong smell of water plants and fish. A slowly rising island is vaguely visible on the horizon in front of the ferry. Its shape keeps changing with the angle and speed of the ferry, becoming more prominent and clearer. Wang Sheng thought it should be Phoenix Island. Chapter 2, 1. Spring arrives. Wang Sheng, guided by the Black Peony and the other women, found Phoenix Elementary School. Tian Fang was teaching a Chinese language lesson to the third-grade students. Phoenix Elementary School was situated behind a grove of metasequoia trees not far from the lake. It was surrounded by farmland, with a rural path just wide enough for a horse-drawn carriage winding through the middle, leading directly to the dock. The rapeseed flowers in the fields were in full bloom, a vibrant yellow. When the wind blew, it stirred up waves of gold. From a distance, Phoenix Elementary School looked like a small boat surrounded by a sea of flowers. The school buildings were constructed with cyan-gray bricks and tiles fired in the island's own kilns, far less sturdy than the red bricks and tiles fired in the Niangzhou county town's round kiln factory. The brick walls of the classrooms had cracks so wide that you could fit a fist inside. Some places were so severely tilted that they had to be supported by wooden beams. The roof tiles were even more severely damaged, with sunlight streaming in on sunny days and rain pouring in on rainy days. Most of the window panes were broken and covered with plastic sheeting. When the wind blew, the plastic sheets tore into strips. In winter, the biting cold wind would break through the windows, leaving not only the students but also the teachers shivering. Fortunately, it was now spring. The spring breeze carried the scent of flowers, and the students, sitting in classrooms with broken walls and leaky roofs, felt like they were in a flowery wilderness. It was pretty charming in its own way. Tian Fang was leading the students in reciting the text Spring. Hoping and longing, the east wind comes, and the footsteps of spring are near. Everything seems to have just woken up, gladly opening its eyes. The mountains become bright and moist, the waters rise, and the sun's face turns red. More kites gradually appear in the sky, and more children appear on the ground. In cities and villages, every household, old and young, emerges as if to catch up. Stretching their muscles and bones, invigorating their spirits, they each go to do their part. The year's plan lies in spring. Just starting out, there is plenty of time and plenty of hope. At this moment, Tian Fang heard a boy's shrill voice calling out, Teacher Tian! Teacher Tian! Someone's looking for you!" The boy was a second-grade student. Like many rural elementary schools lacking teachers, Phoenix Elementary School also adopted the multi-grade teaching method, where one teacher rotated to teach students from several grades. At this moment, while Tian Fang was teaching the third grade, the first and second grade students were either studying on their own in the classroom or playing outside. They could play basketball, ping pong, or anything else as long as they didn't fight. At first, Tian Fang thought it was another mischievous boy reporting a fight, so she ignored it and continued leading the students in recitation. Spring is like a newborn baby. New from head to toe, it grows. Spring is like a young girl, brightly dressed, smiling, walking. Spring is like a vigorous youth, with iron arms and legs leading us forward. Before Tian Fang could finish reading, the wooden door with a broken panel was suddenly pushed open. The second grade boy stood at the classroom door, wiping his nose and saying, "Teacher, a city person is here to see you." Looking at the boy's nervous expression, Tian Fang couldn't help but be surprised. A city person? Who could be looking for her? She put down her textbook and walked towards the door. As soon as she reached the door, she saw a young man wearing glasses and a black jacket, dressed like someone from the city, standing on the playground, smiling and watching her. Tian Fang recognized him as Wang Sheng, her homeroom teacher from the normal school. She was stunned. "Teacher Wang, how did you get here?" Wang Sheng said, "You took 3 days of leave and haven't returned to school. The teachers and students are worried that something happened to you. I came to see you." Tian Fang said, "Teacher Wang, I'm sorry. I was in a hurry to return that day and didn't submit the leave note to you in person." "It's okay. Giving it to class monitor Gang is the same," Wang Sheng said, taking the 2 copies of the school newspaper from his shoulder bag and handing them to Tian Fang. "Your essay was published in the school newspaper. Here are the sample copies." Tian Fang exclaimed in surprise. "Really?" She took the newspaper from Wang Sheng and held it to her chest. Her nostrils fluttered slightly like the wings of a dragonfly due to her excitement. She unfolded the newspaper, quickly scanned the article, then turned her gaze from the newspaper to Wang Sheng and said gratefully, "Teacher Wang, thank you so much. This is the first time I've ever published an article." "You don't need to thank me because your essay was well written," Wang Sheng said while sizing up Tian Fang. This was the first time he had looked at his student so closely. Tian Fang was still wearing the printed fabric dress with blue background and white flowers, very similar to the dresses worn by the women Wang Sheng had seen on the ferry. It was hand-printed and woven by the people of Phoenix Island. The sunlight shone on Tian Fang's pretty face, making her look so tranquil and vibrant. Compared to when she was at school, she had gained a dignified air characteristic of teachers. Tian Fang realized that Wang Sheng was sizing her up, and she lowered her head a little self-consciously. Wang Sheng retracted his gaze. "By the way, Tian Fang, you still haven't told me when you're returning to school." Hearing Wang Sheng's words, the joy on Tian Fang's face was replaced by a shadow. She hesitated for a moment and said, "Teacher Wang, you've traveled so far, you must be tired. Let's go to the office for a cup of tea." Wang Sheng said, "Okay, I'm a little thirsty." "Please wait a moment. I'll arrange something for the students." After speaking, Tian Fang trotted into the classroom. While she was doing that, Wang Sheng looked around the playground. The ground was uneven and full of weeds. At each end of the playground stood 2 basketball hoops. One of the backboards was gone, leaving only a bare frame. In the open space on the east side of the playground were 2 ping-pong tables made of bricks. As Tian Fang had written in her essay, there was no net, and a few bricks were placed on the table. On the earthen slope on the south side of the playground stood a flagpole. At the top of the flagpole, a bright national flag fluttered. The 5 stars on the flag looked so dazzling against the azure sky. Wang Sheng couldn't help but recall the scene in Tian Fang's essay where the old principal led the teachers and students in raising the national flag. Tian Fang arranged things for the students, came out of the classroom, and led Wang Sheng towards the office. The so-called office was just an old room next to the classroom. On the wall remained a faded slogan from a dozen years ago. "Grasp the outline and govern the country. Strive to realize the 4 modernizations." The office was cleaned very well, but the furnishings were very simple. Besides a few rough desks, there wasn't even a cabinet for storing books. Each desk was piled high with students' homework books. The plaster on the walls had peeled off in several places, revealing the cyan-gray bricks and mud. Tian Fang went to the dormitory next door to pour a cup of hot water and handed it to Wang Sheng with both hands. He took a sip and asked curiously, "Where's the old principal you wrote about in your essay? I want to meet him." Unfortunately, the old principal went to the village party secretary's house to discuss some matters and hasn't returned yet. As Tian Fang spoke, her eyes seemed clouded and dim. Wang Sheng vaguely felt that Tian Fang was hiding something unspeakable in her heart. Next, Tian Fang's words shocked Wang Sheng. "Teacher Wang, I'm afraid I have to drop out of school and won't be able to attend the teacher's school." Before she could finish speaking, Tian Fang's eyes turned red. To Tian Fang. When her parents were buried in Niangzhu Lake during that extreme rainstorm, Tian Fang was not yet 5 years old. Her older brother, Tian Shuisheng, was only 13 and had just started junior high school. Many years later, when Tian Fang recalled the scene when her parents had the accident, she still felt a heart-wrenching pain. She clearly remembered that it was an afternoon in autumn, and she and a group of children were singing in the Red Nursery class. The Red Nursery class was the kindergarten of the Phoenix Island Fisheries Brigade. Before going out to the lake to fish, the fishermen would send their children to the Red Nursery class and pick them up after returning to the island. Autumn was the golden season for fishing. During this time, the Fisheries Brigade would organize the fishermen to go to the lake to fish, going out for several days at a time. During this time, the children sent to the Red Nursery class were cared for by the aunts assigned by the brigade, just like in a nursery or kindergarten in the city. Although her parents were not beside her, she didn't have to worry about 3 meals daily. After eating and drinking her fill, some teachers taught her to read, sing, draw, and play games. The children were even happier than they usually were at home. Tian Fang remembered the Red Nursery class as her childhood paradise. There, Tian Fang and her friends often listened to stories told by Grandpa Sun Jingshu on the radio, and they also learned many characters and nursery rhymes, such as small landmine, iron watermelon, uncle holds it in his arms, devils are afraid even in their dreams, afraid early, afraid late. He shut the window and fell asleep. The landmine was under his bed. Pull the wire, and it blooms, blowing the devils back to their hometown, Wali Walla screaming for their mothers. Another was, a red flower, red and red, Sister Liu Hulan is a hero, born in the old society, grew up to be a heroine. That afternoon, the teacher taught a nursery rhyme. Stars in the sky, shining brightly, count them, you can't count them all. Where is the brightest one? The brightest one is in Beijing, Beijing Tiananmen. Chairman Mao is our great savior. A portrait of Chairman Mao hung on the wall of the Red Nursery class. As Tian Fang sang, she looked at the portrait on the wall and felt Chairman Mao was kind and gentle, just like her parents. As she sang, she couldn't help but miss her parents. Every time her parents returned from the lake, they would bring back some water caltrops and lotus pods for her and her brother. Of course, there would also be a few big carp and lotus roots. The family of 4 would gather around the small square table and eat a meal that was even more sumptuous than during the New Year. Tian Fang's mouth watered at the thought. Just then, Tian Fang saw her brother, Tian Shuisheng, carrying his school bag and waving to her at the door of the Red Nursery class. The red scarf around her brother's neck looked like a bright flame. Tian Fang often secretly wore the red scarf after her brother took it off when he came home. Her biggest dream was to wear a red scarf like her brother when she went to elementary school. After her parents went to the lake, her brother also ate and lived at school. His sudden appearance meant that her parents had returned from fishing? The thought flashed through Tian Fang's mind, and her body sprang up from the small stool as if it were equipped with a spring. She ran towards her brother. When she ran up to her brother, she found his face was gloomy, and tears flashed in his eyes. Looking again, she saw that her brother's classmate, Nie Changhai, and the old principal were also standing behind him. Everyone's faces were clouded over, like after a rainstorm. Tian Fang grabbed her brother's sleeve and asked, "Brother, what happened?" Her brother didn't speak but burst into tears. As he cried, he said, "Sister, our parents are gone!" Hearing this, Tian Fang felt as if the sky had suddenly darkened. She buried her head in her brother's arms and burst into tears. After their parents died, Tian Fang and her brother Tian Shuisheng were left to rely on each other. After graduating from junior high school, Tian Shuisheng originally had the opportunity to go to Chengguan High School. Still, to care for his sister, he returned to the Fisheries Brigade to become an accountant. Soon, the commune was dissolved, and the Fisheries Brigade and the Agricultural Brigade were merged. Later, the household contract responsibility system was implemented, and the collective land and fishing production materials were distributed to each household. Tian Fang and her brother received more than 2 acres of land and a fishing boat. Soon, her brother got married, marrying Huang Yulan from the 2nd team of the former Agricultural Brigade. When Tian Fang was in the 1st grade of elementary school, Huang Yulan was already in the 5th grade. She had an oval face and was very pretty. She stood out among the girls in Phoenix Elementary School and was usually very arrogant, not even bothering to look at Tian Fang and the other lower-grade girls. She never expected that Huang Yulan would become her sister-in-law. Tian Fang did very well in class from the 1st to 6th grade of elementary school, consistently ranking at the top. When Tian Fang passed the exam to enter junior high school, Phoenix Island Junior High School had already been abolished, so she could only go to Chengguan Middle School. At that time, Tian Fang's brother Tian Shuisheng and his wife, Huang Yulan, had just given birth to their daughter, Tian Qingqing. Her niece Qingqing had eyes and eyebrows like her father and a nose and mouth like her mother. She was particularly lovely. When Tian Fang returned home from Chengguan Middle School on weekends, she always held Qingqing in her arms and loved her dearly. Tian Fang didn't expect the relationship between her brother Tian Shuisheng and his wife Huang Yulan would soon show cracks. They often argued, and the reason for the arguments was playing mahjong. Since the dissolution of the collective, the people of Phoenix Island had experienced the taste of freedom. After finishing the little work at home, if they didn't want to earn more money, they could play as they pleased. The island was unlike the city. There wasn't much to entertain themselves with, and many people became addicted to playing mahjong. Whether men or women, as long as they could gather 4 people, they would start playing mahjong. Tian Shuisheng and Huang Yulan were the same. Whenever they were free, even if they put down the work at home, they would find a few people to play a game of mahjong. Over time, the couple often argued over wins, losses, and housework. When Tian Fang returned home from Chengguan Middle School several times, she always saw them looking disgruntled. Once, Huang Yulan even disregarded Qingqing, who was only 3 years old, and ran back to her parents' home, where she stayed for 10 days or half a month. Her brother had no choice but to be both a father and a mother, working during the day and caring for his daughter Qingqing when he returned home. Every time Tian Fang returned home from Chengguan Middle School, she felt very bad seeing her brother's tired face. In those years, as the pace of reform and opening up increased, everyone was thinking about how to get rich first. More and more people on Phoenix Island were dissatisfied with farming and fishing and turned their attention to the world outside the island. Many people left Phoenix Island and went to Niangzhou Lake, the provincial capital, or even further south to seek their fortunes. Some made a name for themselves, became rich, and soon moved their entire families out of Phoenix Island. The population of the island gradually decreased, and many lands were abandoned. Even Phoenix Elementary School had several teachers who resigned and went to the south. Soon, after another argument with Huang Yulan, Tian Shuisheng, in a fit of anger, also went south to work. Before going south, Tian Shuisheng went to Chengguan Middle School to see his sister Tian Fang. That day, Tian Fang was in gym class when her brother found her on the playground. Tian Fang saw her brother carrying a bedding roll on his back and a snakeskin bag in his hand, as if he was going on a long journey. She asked, "Brother, where are you going?" "Sister, I'm going south to work." Her brother grinned at her. Tian Fang felt that her brother's smile was a little forced. "You're going south." She looked at her brother suspiciously. "What about your sister-in-law and Ching? Aren't you going to take care of them?" "I can't stand your sister-in-law's temper. I came to you firstly to say goodbye and secondly to tell you to come home when you have time and help your brother take care of your niece." "I don't miss anyone. I miss Ching." As her brother said this, he smiled bitterly. The Adam's apple in his neck moved laboriously as if trying to swallow something down. Then he turned and left. Tian Fang stared at her brother's receding figure, stunned for a long time. After her brother went south, her sister-in-law Huang Yulan didn't stay home for a few days before taking Ching back to her parents' home. When Tian Fang returned home, the front door was tightly locked, and she couldn't even enter the house. After returning to school, she felt depressed for several days. On May Day of the following year, Tian Fang returned to Phoenix Island from Chengguan Middle School and went to her sister-in-law Huang Yulan's parents' home. Huang Yulan's parents' home was in Yazuwan, Duck Bay, in the former agricultural brigade. The bay was at the foot of Xiaolong Mountain, Little Dragon Mountain. Xiaolong Mountain was the only mountain on Phoenix Island. In front of the village was a pond. It was summer, and the pond was rippling with blue waves covered with layers of lotus leaves. You could smell the fragrance of lotus flowers from afar. Huang Yulan's parents' 3-room brick house was next to the pond. That day, Tian Fang didn't see her sister-in-law Huang Yulan, only her niece Ching, holding a bamboo pole and catching dragonflies by the pond at the entrance. Although there were a few patches of mud on her tiny face, she still looked very delicate. She looked at her niece's face and eyebrows, which resembled her brother and sister-in-law, and asked in a trembling voice, Ching, do you still recognize me?" "I recognize you, your auntie." Hearing this, Tian Fang hugged Ching tightly in her arms and released her after a long time. Ching, where's your mom?" she asked. "Mom went south to find Dad," Ching replied. "Mom said she'd come back when she finds Dad and bring me lots and lots of delicious things." "Your mom went south? How long ago?" "She left before the New Year. Mom said she'd come back for the New Year, but it's been almost half a year now. Mom and Dad haven't come back. They're liars." As Ching spoke, a string of tears suddenly rolled from her eyes. Tian Fang felt sorry for Ching and hugged her in her arms again. She cupped Ching's face in her hands, wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes, and carefully looked at her niece. Ching had grown taller since they last saw each other more than a year ago. Her eyes were bright and dark, like 2 glittering black gems. Ching was already 6 years old and would soon be old enough to attend school. She thought her brother and sister-in-law had both gone south. When would they be able to come back? In any case, she couldn't delay Ching's schooling. That day, Tian Fang returned from Yazuwan and thought about it for a long time. That summer, Tian Fang graduated from junior high school. She did not continue high school, but returned to Phoenix Island to become a community teacher at Phoenix Elementary School. The person who brought her back to the island was Liu Jiming, the old principal of Phoenix Elementary School. 3. Dropping out. It was almost noon, and the old principal still hadn't returned. Wang Sheng decided to go back to the normal school. Tian Fang said, "Teacher Wang, have lunch before you leave." "No, I have classes in the afternoon." Wang Sheng hesitated. He originally wanted to wait for the old principal to come back so he could meet him and talk about Tian Fang's dropping out of school. "Think about dropping out again," he said in a suggestive tone as he walked out. Tian Fang didn't respond. Wang Sheng saw that she had lowered her eyelids and was full of thoughts, so he didn't say anything more. As soon as he reached the door of the office, a girl about 10 years old, holding a shuttlecock in her hand, came running from outside, bumping into Wang Sheng head-on and almost falling to the ground. Wang Sheng quickly supported her. He saw that the little girl had big eyes, long eyebrows, and fluttering eyelashes, which was very cute. He turned his face to look at Tian Fang. Just as he was about to say something, Tian Fang took the initiative to introduce him. "Teacher Wang, this is my niece, Tian Qing. She's in the 3rd grade." Wang Sheng nodded and smiled. "Oh, no wonder she looks a lot like you." "She looks like my brother." Tian Fang also smiled, affectionately reaching out to caress her niece's hair. "Qing, call Teacher Wang. Teacher Wang has a postgraduate degree, more knowledgeable than a university student." Qing obediently called out, "Teacher Wang," and lowered her head. Tian Fang escorted Wang Sheng all the way to the dock by the lake. At the ferry crossing, Wang Sheng stopped and looked back at the field full of rapeseed flowers he had just walked through. He took a deep breath and exclaimed, "The scenery on the island is so beautiful. Even the air is sweet. Next time I have time, I must come and take a good stroll." Tian Fang said, "Okay, Teacher Wang, I'll be your guide then and take you to climb Xiaolong Mountain." "Okay, Tian Fang, it's a deal," Wang Sheng said with a smile. The two parted ways at the ferry crossing. When Tian Fang returned to school, the students had already been dismissed and gone home. Today was Saturday, only a half day of classes, and the campus, which had been noisy all morning, fell silent. The playground was empty. Only Tian Fang, Qing, and the old principal remained at the school every weekend. The cafeteria worker also went home, so they cooked their meals. They had nowhere else to go. The old principal had been single for most of his life and had always made the school his home. Since her brother and sister-in-law had gone south to work, Tian Fang also treated the school as her home. After Qing started elementary school, she also ate and lived at school with her. She would only go to her grandparents' house for a while during the summer and winter vacations. It was already noon, and the old principal still hadn't returned. Tian Fang, as usual, cooked some noodles and ate them with Qing, then came to the office alone to grade students' homework. Tian Fang taught Chinese to 3 grades of students on her own, and she was so busy grading homework every day. But at this moment, she couldn't concentrate her mind. She kept getting distracted, and she kept hearing Wang Sheng's words from the morning, advising her not to drop out of school. When Tian Fang returned to Phoenix Island from the teacher's college last week, she met her niece Qing at the school gate and heard that Liu Shigui had resigned. She was stunned. Liu Shigui was Qing's homeroom teacher. Before Tian Fang went to the teacher's college to study in the community teacher class, she and Liu Shigui were the only 2 teachers at Phoenix Elementary School besides the old principal. The 3 of them were responsible for all the courses for 6 grades. After Tian Fang went to the teacher's college, the classes she taught were placed on the shoulders of the old principal and Liu Shigui. Liu Shigui was a classmate of Tian Fang's brother Tian Shuisheng and the village party secretary Nie Changhai. After graduating from middle school, he taught at Phoenix Elementary School. He had been a community teacher for more than 10 years. In recent years, several teachers with similar qualifications to him at Phoenix Elementary School had resigned or passed the exam to become publicly funded teachers, and they had all left. This time, Liu Shigui and Tian Fang took the privately funded to publicly funded teacher exam together, but in the end, Tian Fang passed, and he failed again. Since then, Liu Shigui had been in a bad mood and was listless in class. He was getting older, and the opportunity to convert to public status became even more remote. Tian Fang felt a little guilty and always felt sorry for Liu Shigui. After passing the exam to enter the teacher's college, Tian Fang couldn't help but think of the old principal and Liu Shigui and those students left at the school. Of course, there was also her niece, Tian Qing. In these years, she and Qing had lived together day and night, not separated for a single day. Now that she had come to the teacher's college to study, leaving Qing at the school, even though the old principal cared for her, Tian Fang couldn't help but worry. She felt her body was at the normal school, but her heart was still on Phoenix Island. Therefore, she returned to Phoenix Island from the teacher's college every week. But now Liu Shigui had resigned. Hearing this news, Tian Fang's heart was like a fishing boat that had suddenly encountered a storm, losing its direction in the whirlpool. If Liu Shigui really resigned, wouldn't Phoenix Elementary School be left with only the old principal? Tian Fang didn't want to think about it any further. She dropped Ching and hurried to the office. Usually, at this time, the old principal and Liu Shigui were mostly in the office grading student assignments. But that day, Tian Fang saw only the old principal. She didn't see Liu Shigui at the desk across from him, piled with homework books. In an instant, Tian Fang's heart felt like it was filled with lead, becoming heavy. The old principal saw her enter, put down the dip pen in his hand, and stood up from the tattered rattan chair with a blackened color. "Tian Fang, why are you back again? Didn't I tell you that I am taking care of Ching? You don't need to run back and forth every week?" It was the tone of a father scolding his daughter, but Tian Fang could see from the old principal's flickering eyes that he was obviously avoiding something. "Old principal, Teacher Liu, he resigned?" Tian Fang's voice trembled slightly. The old principal, who had just stood up, suddenly sat back down in the rattan chair. "You know," he said, pretending to be nonchalant. "In these years, Liu Shigui's wife has not been easy running a small business in the county town. It's also good for him to go and help her." Several years ago, Liu Shigui's wife had gone to the county town and rented a shop in the seafood market, selling fish while supporting their son to study at Chengguan Elementary School. The couple rarely saw each other. This was a fact. Liu Shigui had said more than once that if he didn't pass the exam to convert to public status, he would go to the county town and become a fishmonger with his wife. Now he had finally taken this step. But what would happen to Phoenix Elementary School in the future? Tian Fang looked at the empty classroom, recalling the scene when she had just returned to the island from Chengguan Middle School and became a teacher at Phoenix Elementary School. At that time, Phoenix Elementary School had more than 100 students and 7 or 8 teachers. The classrooms were filled with the sound of reading and singing, and the playground was filled with laughter. The old principal led the teachers and students to hold a flag-raising ceremony every morning. The teachers and students filled the playground. The scene was solemn and enthusiastic, and the campus presented a vibrant and prosperous scene. But in less than a few years, Phoenix Elementary School, which had been ranked among the top 3 of more than a dozen rural elementary schools in Chengguan, had fallen to second to last place. Not only had the number of students sharply reduced from more than 100 to more than 50, but the number of teachers had also been reduced by 2/3. By the time Tian Fang had passed the exam to enter the normal school, including the old principal, only 3 people were left. The old principal's eyes met Tian Fang's but quickly shifted to the side. This was not the old principal's usual style, Tian Fang thought. The old principal had always been strict with himself, fair in his dealings, and highly respected in the eyes of the school and the people of Phoenix Island. In Tian Fang's heart, she had a special feeling for the old principal. Since her parents had died in the disaster, she and her brother had been in the boarding class at Phoenix Elementary School. Like every orphan who had lost their parents, they received the old principal's meticulous care. One night, Tian Fang had acute meningitis and had a high fever of 41 degrees Celsius. The old principal carried her to the Brigade Health Clinic and gave her an IV drip all night, but the high fever still didn't subside. There was no other way, so the old principal and the barefoot doctor woke the old boatman at the ferry crossing in the middle of the night and drove the boat overnight to send them off the island to the People's Hospital in Chengguan. Tian Fang later heard her brother say that if she had been sent to the hospital a few hours later that day, she would have lost her life. Therefore, in her heart, the old principal was like her father. The old principal also treated her as his own child. Although the old principal treated every student at the school as his own child, he seemed to be even closer to Tian Fang. She could feel this. "Resign, then resign. I'll discuss it with Shanghai tomorrow and go to Chengguan to find the education team to send us a teacher," the old principal said in a very relaxed tone. But Tian Fang could tell that the old principal was comforting her. In these years, many farmers and fishermen on the island couldn't resist the temptation from the outside, and they left Phoenix Island one after another. Every time a teacher at Phoenix Elementary School passed the exam to convert to public status, they tried every means to be transferred to an elementary school in the city or near Chengguan. How easy would it be to send a teacher? That day, Tian Fang decided to drop out of school and return to Phoenix Island. 4. The old principal. It was after 3 p.m. when the old principal finally returned to Phoenix Elementary School. The old principal was almost 60, but like most elderly men on Phoenix Island, he was sturdy and strong. He wore a blue felt hat, and his Zhongshan suit was also blue, but it had faded and turned a little white. Since childhood, the old principal has worn this outfit, like a fixed old photo printed in Tian Fang's memory. If it wasn't for the pen stuck in his jacket pocket, showing his identity as the principal of Phoenix Elementary School, he would have looked no different from the old farmers and fishermen on the island. As soon as the old principal entered the school office door, Tian Fang smelled alcohol. She knew the old principal had been drinking again at the village party secretary Ni Changhai's house. The old principal didn't play mahjong, and he didn't smoke much either. His only hobby was drinking a little alcohol. In his dormitory, besides a pile of clutter, empty wine bottles were lined up along the base of the wall. Although the old principal loved to drink, he rarely drank at ordinary times. He only drank a little on weekends. He never chose his dishes when he drank. He could sip 2 mouthfuls with or without dishes. Tian Fang had known this hobby of the old principal since childhood. Sometimes, she dug up wild chives in the wilderness by the lake, and after returning, she added 2 eggs to stir-fried dishes and used them as a snack for the old principal to drink alcohol with. The old principal picked up a chopstick of fragrant stir-fried wild chives with eggs, eating and praising, "Tian Fang's cooking is delicious. Even the chef in the school cafeteria can't compare." His tone was like praising his own daughter. Since her parents passed away, Tian Fang had learned to cook, and her cooking was no worse than that of any housewife on the island. Her brother Tian Shuisheng also said so, and after getting married, he always complained that his sister-in-law, Huang Yulan, didn't cook as well as she did. Every time the old principal drank alcohol, his dark face turned red and bright. The wrinkles at the corners of his eyes stretched out. His always serious face was filled with a smile, and he spoke more than usual. From the old principal's mouth, Tian Fang learned many past stories about Phoenix Island, including the bloody massacre before liberation, how the old principal's family was killed, and how he himself escaped from death. Perhaps because so many years had passed, the old principal didn't show much sadness on his face when he talked about his tragic experience, and he seemed very calm. This left a deep impression on the young Tian Fang. After growing up, Tian Fang realized that the old principal had taught her how to face suffering through his words and deeds. Every time the old principal went to the village party secretary Ni Changhai's house to discuss matters, he would always stay at his house for a drink. Of course, more often than not, they talked while drinking. On Phoenix Island, only Ni Changhai could often drink and talk with the old principal. This was not only because Ni Changhai's wife Xiaoman was the most capable and virtuous woman on the island, and also made the best food, but also because of the special relationship between the old principal and Ni Changhai. Ni Changhai was the only worker-peasant-soldier university student on the island. Thanks to the old principal, he was recommended to go to university in the provincial capital. At that time, the old principal was the chairman of the Poor Peasants Association in the Phoenix Island Management District, and his opinion was crucial for recommending worker-peasant-soldier students. Ni Changhai was not only good at his studies among that group of orphans, but his performance in all aspects was outstanding, and the old principal deeply valued him. When Ni Changhai returned to Phoenix Island after graduating high school, the old principal cultivated him and admitted him to the party. Later, recommending him to go to university was also a natural thing. After graduating from university, Ni Changhai gave up the opportunity to stay in the county town to work and returned to Phoenix Island, also listening to the old principal's opinion. After the Phoenix Island Management District was dissolved, it was said that the higher-ups had initially intended to let the old principal be the village party secretary, but he recommended Ni Changhai instead. The people on the island said that the old principal was a trustworthy talent scout, had a discerning eye for heroes, and found a good island owner for Phoenix Island, which was not an exaggeration. Since Tian Fang said she wanted to drop out of school that day, the old principal looked solemn and frowning for several days, as if he were carrying a heavy burden. Tian Fang knew that the old principal didn't want her to delay her personal future for the school's work. For this matter, the old principal took Ni Changhai to the County Education Commission and the Chengguan education team, but there were no results. "You've been drinking again?" Tian Fang put aside the student homework she hadn't finished grading, poured a cup of hot water and handed it to the old principal. The old principal nodded and took the water cup, drooping his eyelids. He then went to sit at his desk by the window, not speaking for a long time. "Teacher Wang from the normal school came today," Tian Fang said while observing the old principal's face. "He's the head class teacher of our community teach class." The old principal hummed again, absent-mindedly. What did he come to do? "He came for a home visit," Tian Fang said. "He also advised me not to drop out of school." Tian Fang's words seemed to arouse the old principal's interest, and his two white eyebrows jumped. "Oh, didn't you tell him I don't agree with you dropping out either?" "I didn't say." "Ah." The old principal glanced at Tian Fang and sighed. Your temper is as stubborn as your brother's. I couldn't initially persuade him to go south to work, and you are the same. Several cows can't pull you back once you set your mind on something. Girl, you should have kept Teacher Wang for a while longer and waited for me to come back and chat with him," the old principal said, like a father treating his own daughter, with a tone of blame and concern. The word girl warmed Tian Fang's heart. This was what the old principal often called her as a child, but he had rarely called her that since she became a teacher at Phoenix Elementary School. For a moment, she didn't know what to say. The old principal lowered his head and took a sip of water, and his mind seemed to turn to something else. The old principal's unhappy expression told Tian Fang that even though he had drunk at the village party secretary Ni Changhai's house, he was not happy. Ni Changhai had been very opinionated since he was a child. The old principal had recognized this exceptional talent among the group of orphans in the boarding class, proving that he hadn't seen the wrong person. In these years, watching Ni Changhai grow step by step and become the top leader in Phoenix Island, the old principal felt very comfortable in his heart, like drinking half a bottle of sweet potato wine. In the past, whenever there was a significant event in the village, Ni Changhai would always come to the elementary school to hear his opinion. Or for matters related to the schoolwork, the old principal often went to Ni Changhai's house to discuss, and by the way, have a drink together. At that time, although the old principal no longer had the title of chairman of the Poor Peasants Association, he also served as a member of the village party branch. Strictly speaking, he was superior and subordinate to Ni Changhai, but in fact, the relationship between the two was like father and son. Ni Changhai's respect for the old principal was even more significant than what a son would have for his father. However, at some point in time, this special relationship between the old principal and Ni Changhai gradually changed. Although the two still often drank together and during festivals, Changhai's wife Xiaoman still made a full table of wine and dishes as usual, especially inviting the old principal to his home for a drink. They chatted more and more about trivial matters, but talked less and less about work. This was even more true after the old principal retired from the party committee a few years ago. Ni Changhai no longer informed him about many things in the village. The old principal only learned about the team-run enterprises contracting the breeding farm, kiln, and winery to private individuals several months later. Although he felt a little unhappy, he didn't say anything. He was no longer a branch committee member, and Ni Changhai did nothing wrong by not informing him about the village affairs. As the oldest party member with the longest party age on Phoenix Island, the old principal naturally understood this principle, but couldn't adapt emotionally. People were old, and their ideas couldn't keep up with the times. It was less worrying for everyone to be mindless about the younger generation's affairs. The old principal comforted himself like this, and in the future, when the two drank together, Ni Changhai didn't take the initiative to mention the work in the village, and the old principal would never ask. A tacit understanding seemed to have gradually formed between them. But this tacit understanding was broken not long ago. The matter concerned Xiaolong Mountain. Xiaolong Mountain had always been the breeding base of the agricultural brigade, a place where collectively raised cattle, chickens, and ducks were kept. After the land was distributed to households, the farmland and bamboo forests on the island were distributed, and several team-run enterprises were also distributed. Xiaolong Mountain had been barren. Not long ago, village party secretary Ni Changhai quietly acquired Xiaolong Mountain and began animal husbandry on the mountain. After hearing about this, the old principal, contrary to the tacit understanding that had been formed between the two, went to find Ni Changhai. This time, the two talked very unhappily. The old principal opposed Ni Changhai's plan to contract Xiaolong Mountain and turn the entire mountain into a breeding farm. The old principal's attitude was unyielding, and he almost lost his temper. He suppressed his anger and questioned the village party secretary. "Changhai, do you know what kind of place Xiaolong Mountain is?" "What kind of place? Isn't there just a Guanyin temple on the mountain?" Nia Changhai said disapprovingly. "The old people in the village are worried that disturbing the bodhisattva will bring disaster to the island. I am a Communist Party member, so I can't engage in superstition. Leaving such a big mountain barren is a waste. If you object to my contracting of Xiaolong Mountain, I can let it to others." The village party secretary's last sentence was clearly a bit angry, but the old principal interrupted him. "I'm not just opposed to you contracting. I'm opposed to anyone contracting it." "Then why? Have you forgotten that the unjust souls of hundreds of people are lying on the mountain?" The old principal's trembling voice made Ni Changhai stunned. The unjust souls of hundreds of people that the old principal was talking about referred to the horrific massacre on Phoenix Island before liberation. The Dongjiang Provincial Party Committee and the General Hospital of the military region, secretly stationed on Phoenix Island, were suddenly surrounded by the landlord's home-returning armed forces of Niangzhou County due to betrayal. Nearly 100 cadres, wounded soldiers, medical staff, and activists of the Peasant Association, of the Provincial Party Committee, and the Military Region Hospital were brutally killed. When Nia Changhai was still in elementary school, he had heard the old principal talk about this tragic past more than once. Now, seeing him so vehemently opposing his building a breeding farm on the mountain, he was pretty surprised. But he didn't immediately refute the old principal. Years of father-son-like relationship made him unable to fall out with the old principal over such a thing. "Changhai, can you bear to let chickens and ducks defecate and urinate on the mountain all day long, making those people restless?" the old principal said in a hoarse voice. At that time, he and Ni Changhai had already been drinking for a while, and less than half a bottle of sweet potato wine remained. Both of their faces were flushed. Don't forget that besides the dozens of elders and folks on the island, there are also dozens of Liberation Army cadres and soldiers lying on the mountain. Among the dozens of elders and folks on the island, the old principal mentioned were his parents and sister. He became an orphan because of this massacre. As an orphan himself, Nia Changhai could understand the old principal's feelings. "For decades, I have been going to burn paper for them every year during Qingming. I originally wanted to take some time to discuss this with you. When our village has savings, we should repair and renovate the cemetery," the old principal said to this point, glaring at Nie Changhai. "I didn't expect that you were going to raise chickens and ducks on Xiaolong Mountain." Nie Changhai was a little apprehensive. He originally wanted to say, "The revolutionary martyrs shed their blood and sacrificed themselves just to let more people get rich today and let everyone live a good life, right?" But the old principal didn't wait for him to open his mouth, so he dropped the wine glass he hadn't finished drinking and stormed off. For the first time, the village party secretary realized that the Xiaolong Mountain Martyrs Cemetery held a status in the old principal's heart that far exceeded his expectations. Chapter 3. 1. That year, That snow, the winter of 1948 was freezing and arrived earlier than usual. It snowed for several days in a row as soon as it entered the 10th lunar month. The snowfall was substantial. The first evening started with snow grains, which tickled people's faces and disappeared before they could fall to the ground. In the middle of the night, the snow grains gradually turned into snowflakes, about the size of salt grains, which made a rustling sound when they hit the thatched roofs of poor people's houses and a squeaking sound when they hit the tiled roofs of rich people's homes. The rustling and squeaking sounds had disappeared by the night's second half. The old north wind, which had been blowing for several days, also fell silent. The whole world was as if asleep, in a deathly silence. The children, pricking up their ears in bed to listen to the sound of the snowflakes, thought that the snow had stopped and fell asleep with a trace of regret. When they woke up and opened their eyes the following day, they saw a dazzling light outside the window. They crawled out of bed, grabbed the window, and looked outside. Oh my goodness! The ground was covered with thick snow, and goose feather-like snowflakes were still falling in the sky. The whole island seemed to be draped in a white cloak, a world of silver and white. People never dreamed that a special team quietly landed on Phoenix Island on this snowy night. This team was the Communist Party's Dongjiang Provincial Party Committee and the General Hospital of the Military Region. At that time, the Kuomintang Army's Central China Suppression Headquarters had assembled 5 armies and 15 divisions, totaling 200,000 troops. They launched a full-scale offensive against the Niangzhou Lake Base area and Dongjiang Province. To preserve its strength, the CCP Dongjiang Provincial Party Committee and the Dongjiang Military Region, following instructions from the CCP Central Committee, ordered the troops under its jurisdiction to withdraw from the partially occupied cities and rural liberated areas and transfer to the northern mountainous regions where the enemy's forces were weak. The Dongjiang Provincial Party Committee originally planned to withdraw to the northern mountainous areas with the main force as well. Still, the day before departure, it suddenly received a secret telegram from the Central Committee. To alleviate the military pressure on our army in the Northeast and North China regions, implement Chairman Mao Zedong's strategic thinking of "you fight your way, I fight my way," firmly grasp the initiative in the war, and open up a new battlefield, the Central Military Commission planned to send a primary force of the People's Liberation Army south urgently, inserting a knife behind the Kuomintang Army and tearing open a gap to change our army's passive situation of being surrounded by enemies on all sides, and instructed the Dongjiang Provincial Party Committee and the Dongjiang Military Region to hide nearby, and once the main force arrived, command the troops under their command to cooperate with the main force to launch a full-scale counteroffensive against the enemy. The Dongjiang Provincial Party Committee then temporarily changed its plan and decided that it and the Military Region Hospital would hide in Niangzhou Lake, not far from the provincial capital, Dajiang City. The Niangzhou Lake Base area was one of the few liberated areas controlled by the CCP in the Dongjiang area after the victory of the anti-Japanese war. In the early stage of the anti-Japanese war, the Kuomintang had designated the capital of Dongjiang Province as the wartime capital, and Dajiang City had once become the national political, military, and cultural center. The Dongjiang Bureau, established by the CCP for cooperation between the Kuomintang and the Communist Party, existed in Dajiang City for 8 years, from the outbreak of the war to its victory. In addition, during the war, the main force of the 5th Division of the new 4th Army continued its anti-Japanese struggle in the Niangzhou Lake area, which had a strong mass base. Therefore, after Japan's surrender, Niangzhou Lake naturally became one of the first liberated regions led by the Communist Party. Niangzhou County also became the office location of the Dongjiang Provincial Party Committee and the Dongjiang Military Region. After careful research, the Dongjiang Provincial Party Committee chose Phoenix Island as the specific hiding place. This was not only because Phoenix Island was a large island in Niangzhou Lake, large enough to accommodate a team of more than 100 people for short-term hiding, but also because during the anti-Japanese war, the Communist New Fourth Army had established an anti-Japanese democratic government on the island, which had a good mass base, making it easy to maintain secrecy. Liu Jifeng's father, Liu Dahai, was the secretary of the CCP Phoenix Island Party branch and the director of the Armed Forces Committee. His sister, Manzu, was the president of the Village Women's Federation. Even Liu Jifeng, who had just turned 11, was a member of the Children's Corps. However, at that time, he was not called Jifeng, but Heizi, Blackie. The night the People's Liberation Army landed on Phoenix Island, Heizi had already gone to bed early because of the cold weather. But in the night's second half, Heizi was awakened by a rustling sound. At first, he thought it was snowing. Heizi liked snowing the most. Every winter, Heizi looked forward to snowing the most. As long as it snowed, he wasn't afraid of the cold. Phoenix Island. After the snow was so beautiful. He could build snowmen and chase rabbits in the snow with his friends. When the weather was coldest, Niangzhu Lake was frozen, with half a foot of ice. Skating on the lake was such a happy thing. When Heizi heard the rustling outside, he thought it must be snowing. He was so excited that his body stiffened and his sleepiness disappeared without a trace. Without even bothering to put on his cotton-padded jacket, he crawled out of bed and grabbed the window to look outside. It was indeed snowing outside. A soft, feathery snow. The snow on the ground was already half a foot deep, like a thick layer of cotton, whitening the night. But the snowfall did not make a rustling sound. Goose feather snow would not make a rustling sound, only snow grains and snowflakes would. When Heizi opened his eyes wide and saw the scene outside, he was so surprised that he couldn't close his mouth. A team was walking from the direction of the lake to the village. Some wore military uniforms, some wore civilian clothes, and some were men and women, old and young, mixed. Some carried rifles on their shoulders, some carried short guns on their waists, some carried burdens, and some led mules. The mules were carrying document bags on their backs. Some were leaning on crutches and had bandages wrapped around their heads. It was apparent that they were wounded soldiers. The goose feather snowflakes were falling on their hats and coats, and some people had turned as white as snowmen. Heizi couldn't determine the type of army this was. In the years when fighting the Japanese devils, puppet troops, and Kuomintang regular troops had come to the island, a detachment of the new Fourth Army had been stationed on Phoenix Island and had fought the Japanese devils' steamboats on Niangzhu Lake. But this team was different from the teams that Heizi had seen. At this moment, a tall soldier with a machine gun on his shoulder walked past Heizi's door. With the reflection of the snow, Heizi saw a bright red 5-pointed star on his hat. Heizi's heart lit up. He remembered that his father and sister had told him that the Red Army and the People's Liberation Army, led by the Communist Party, had a 5-pointed star on their hats. Could this team under his eyelids be the People's Liberation Army? Heizi's heart was filled with excitement. He jumped off the bed and was about to run outside, but as soon as he took a step, he was grabbed by a hand. Looking back, he saw his mother standing behind him, draped in a cotton-padded coat and holding an oil lamp. "Heizi, our team has landed on the island," his mother said softly, with an irrepressible joy on her face. "Mom, are they really the People's Liberation Army?" Heizi pointed outside and said, "Yes, child." His mother nodded repeatedly. Due to excitement, the flame of the oil lamp in her hand kept shaking. Only then did Heizi realize that his father and sister were not at home. He asked, "Where are my father and my sister?" His mother said softly, "Your father and your sister went to the lake to welcome the team long ago." Heizi pouted and snorted angrily. "You didn't tell me about such a big thing in advance, and I'm still a member of the children's course." "Silly child, this is a secret. Your father and your sister didn't even tell me." His mother touched Heizi's head and blew out the oil lamp. "Our team hasn't been here for a long time since we drove away the Japanese devils," his mother said with unprecedented joy. "Go to sleep, child. From tomorrow onwards, our family will be lively." Heizi returned to bed and crawled back into the quilt, but he couldn't fall asleep. In the darkness, the rustling sound outside continued endlessly. This time, he heard it clearly. It was not the sound of snow falling on the ground, but the sound of the People's Liberation Army team walking. The next day, as soon as it dawned, Heizi was awakened by a burst of talking. He opened his sleepy eyes and heard someone's voice in the main room. It was a foreign accent, as if they were having a meeting. He put on his clothes and tiptoed to open the half-closed door, seeing that the main room was full of people. Several people wearing military coats sat around the tree stump fireplace in the middle of the main room, warming themselves by the fire and talking. The voice was very low, and everyone listening had a serious face, bowing their heads and taking notes. Heizi saw that everyone had a belt tied around their waists and a handgun attached. Some were Mauser pistols, and some were Brownings. During the anti-Japanese war, Heizi's house was a fortified household and had housed the commander of the new 4th Army Detachment. The commander had a Browning pistol on his waist, and the adjutant beside the commander had a Mauser pistol on his side. Heizi also saw his father and sister Manzu among the people listening to the meeting. Still, they were not sitting in a row with those wearing military uniforms, but sitting behind them. Later, Heizi learned that they were attending the meeting. His sister buried her head in taking notes like the others, as seriously as if she were attending a formal meeting. His father didn't recognize the characters, so he just listened with his ears, puffing on his leaf cigarettes. Just as Heizi was about to go out of the wing and listen to what they were saying, he happened to catch his mother coming in from the kitchen outside with a fragrant smell of scallions on her body. Heizi knew that his mother was cooking for the people meeting in the main room. It was always like this when the new 4th Army had meetings at home before. The scallion pancakes that his mother made were not only loved by his whole family, but also by the commanders of the new 4th Army. "Heizi, the comrades are having a meeting. Don't go out and make trouble." Hearing what his mother said, Heizi obediently retreated to the wing and crawled back into the quilt. The weather was freezing. His hands and feet were freezing after only slipping out of bed for a short while. 2 days later, Heizi learned from his father and sister Manzu that the people who had landed on the island on that snowy night were the Provincial Party Committee and the General Hospital of the military region. The meeting that day at his house was the Provincial Party Committee meeting, and the person speaking was the prominent leader of the Provincial Party Committee. Heizi didn't understand how prominent a leader he was. One day he asked his father, and his father said that he was even more significant than the commander of the new 4th Army who had lived in his house back then. However, Heizi was not interested in these things. He only knew that the People's Liberation Army, which had come to Phoenix Island now, like the new 4th Army in those years, were all Communist Party teams. His father and sister Manzu were both Communist Party members. They were a family. Thinking about this, Heizi felt proud from the bottom of his heart. The only thing he felt slightly regretful about was that the big leader of the Provincial Party Committee hadn't lived in his house. Otherwise, he could have boasted about it to his friends again, as he had done before. The Provincial Party Committee lived in Han Laogua's house. Han Laogua was the biggest landlord and fishing tyrant on Phoenix Island. Every inch of land and dozens of miles of lake harbor belonged to Han. Farmers who cultivated the land and fishermen who went to the lake all had to pay him rent. When the Japanese occupied Niangzhu Lake, Han Laogua ostensibly shouted anti-Japanese slogans, but secretly colluded with the devils stationed in Niangzhu County, secretly delivering intelligence to the devils and selling out the new 4th Army. After the devils surrendered, Phoenix Island and Niangzhu County were returned to the control of the Communist Party, and a democratic government was established on the island, launching a vigorous movement to fight landlords and redistribute land. Han Laogua, facing liquidation, fled at the first sign of trouble and hid in the provincial capital, colluding with a group of fleeing landlords to form the Dongjiang Provincial Anti-Communist and National Salvation Home Returning Headquarters, where he served as the commander himself. He attacked the Communist Party's democratic government everywhere and assassinated and kidnapped grassroots cadres with a very arrogant aura. After Han Laogua fled, dozens of houses in Han's compound were distributed to poor farmers and fishermen who had no homes to call their own. The remaining few houses were used for the village committee, the armed forces committee, and the women's federation. This time, when the Dongjiang Provincial Party Committee and the Military Region Hospital came, they were vacated for the leaders of the Provincial Party Committee to live in. There was also a cadre living in Heizi's house, who was a woman about the same age as Heizi's sister Manzu, with fair skin, wearing a well-fitting gray cloth uniform with a small handgun on her waist, a pair of big and bright eyes, and two dimples that were particularly beautiful when she smiled. She wore a red scarf around her neck, which looked like a leaping flame in the snowy weather. She was a staff member of the Military Region Hospital named Bai Shui. Like how they addressed all the People's Liberation Army cadres and soldiers, his mother called her Comrade Bai, while his sister Manzu called her by her first name, Bai Shui Bai Shu, with an intimacy like sisters. During the day, the two were busy with work, one in the Women's Federation and one in the hospital, each busy with their own things. After returning home in the evening, the two hid in the West Wing, chattering and whispering. Heizi was writing in the main room and couldn't help but be curious. He sneaked in, wanting to hear what they were saying. His sister, seeing him, deliberately put on a stern face and scolded him. "Go away! A man should mind his business and not listen to women's talk." Heizi knew that his sister wasn't really chasing him away, so he stubbornly refused to leave. Bai Shu reached out and pulled him over, looked at his literacy textbook, and asked intimately, "Heizi, how many characters can you recognize?" Heizi was reading the first book of elementary school at that time. He was slightly embarrassed, and Bai Shui tilted her head and asked, "Then I'll test you. How do you write the two characters liberation?" Heizi had learned these two characters but couldn't answer them momentarily. He had no choice but to touch the back of his head and grin foolishly. Bai Shu then took the pencil from Heizi's hand and taught him to write the two characters liberation on the notebook, stroke by stroke, and also made a sentence with these two characters. "The Communist Party Chairman Mao leads the poor people to turn over and make liberation." Heizi read along, word by word. Heizi felt Bai Shu's voice was so pleasant. From that day on, whenever Bai Shu returned home from outside, she would teach him literacy whenever she was free. In just a few days, she taught him to learn many characters. Heizi increasingly felt that Bai Shui was a kind and amiable sister, calling her Sister Bai one after another, more intimately than his own sister Manzu. Manzu was busy with the work of the Women's Federation all day long. After the People's Liberation Army landed on the island, she was also busy organizing the women in the village to support the army activities. She didn't have time to teach him literacy. However, she was pleased that Bai Shui was teaching Heizi literacy. Once she said to her mother, "I didn't expect Bai Shui to come live in our house and hire an unpaid teacher for Heizi." His mother also said with a smile, "It's good, but I'm afraid it will delay Comrade Bai's revolutionary work." Although his mother was not a cadre like his father and sister, her awareness was no worse. One night, Bai Shu was teaching Heizi literacy, and Heizi read the text for a while. As he read, he fell asleep. Later, he was awakened by a burst of whispering. It was his sister and Bai Shu talking. "Bai Shu, how long can you stay on the island?" "This is a military secret. Even our leaders at the Military Region Hospital are unaware. Only the leaders of the Provincial Party Committee know." "What, Manzu, are you in a hurry to drive us away?" "Where? I'm worried about you leaving." His sister seemed to justify herself, raising her voice. "It's almost the new year. It would be great if the troops could stay and spend a happy new year with the folks." "Even if we spend the new year on the island, we can't be too noisy. Now Nyangzu County is full of Kuomintang troops. Secrecy is the most important thing. If the news is leaked, the Provincial Party Committee and the Military Region Hospital will be trapped on this island surrounded by water, which would be dangerous. I heard from Minister Cheng of the Enemy Work Department that your home is in the provincial capital?" "Yes. Minister Cheng's home is also in the provincial capital. Our two families are only separated by 2 streets. He was my teacher when I attended the teachers' college. Bai Shui said, Minister Cheng joined the revolution much earlier than me. His lover is engaged in underground work in Beiping and sacrificed herself the year before last. The two were silent for a while. Bai Shu, I also heard Minister Cheng say that before you joined the revolution, you studied at the teachers' college in the provincial capital. Yes, I studied music. Then you must be very good at singing. I studied composition, not vocal music. However, I can sing well. I was the lead singer of the choir at school. Then sing a song for me. Okay, what should I sing? Bai Shui pondered for a moment and sang softly, The flowers in the flower basket are fragrant. Listen to me sing, sing, sing came to Naniwan. Naniwan is a good place, a good place, a good place with good scenery, a good place with good scenery. Everywhere is crops, everywhere are cattle and sheep. Where is Naniwan? Yan'an, where the party central committee chairman Mao lives. Have you been to Yan'an? I haven't been there, but he has been there. Who is he? I won't tell you. Hee, you're blushing. The two pinched and hit each other, laughing nonstop. After laughing, his sister said, I know, even if you don't tell me. I heard Minister Cheng say that you have a boyfriend who is also on our team. But before his sister could finish speaking, Bai Shu covered her mouth and scolded, Minister Cheng tells you everything. What is your relationship with him? At that moment, his mother came in from outside. Heizi, go back to the West Wing to sleep. Comrade Bai also has to rest early. She has to work tomorrow. Heizi pretended to have just woken up, yawned, and was led by his mother towards the East Wing, walking out. When he reached the door, he looked back secretly and saw that his sister and Bai Shui's faces were as red as if they had just been blown by the cold wind. Very pretty. Returning to the West Wing, Heizi quietly asked his mother, Who is Minister Cheng? His mother was a little strange that he suddenly asked about this topic and said ambiguously, Minister Cheng, is that the bespectacled leader who ate at our house the day before yesterday? Heizi didn't say anything more. After crawling into the quilt, he still heard the whispers of his sister Manzu and Bai Shui in his ears, as if he had caught a glimpse of some secret, and laughed secretly in the quilt. 2. That New Year's Eve. If it were in previous years, after passing the Little New Year on the 24th day of the 12th lunar month, the New Year atmosphere on Phoenix Island would become stronger day by day. Every household would start grinding tofu and making glutinous rice cakes. Wealthy families would also slaughter pigs and sheep. Neighbors would invite each other to drink pig's blood soup. Even the poorest families would fry sesame twists, cook malt candy, go to the city to buy firecrackers, or buy new clothes for children and the elderly. But this year was different. Since the Dongjiang Provincial Party Committee and the Military Region Hospital had secretly stationed themselves on Phoenix Island, stringent confidentiality measures had been taken. Not only had all communication between Phoenix Island and the county town been blockaded, but all ferries and ships on the island had been suspended. The Military Region Guard Company and the village's Armed Forces Committee militiamen had set up strict sentry posts on all sides of the island. Villagers were also required to minimize gatherings and recreational activities during the Spring Festival. The People's Liberation Army cadres, soldiers, and wounded and sick soldiers living in the villagers' homes were not allowed to accept the old neighbors' banquets and drinks. They maintained a high state of alert at all times. Even the Children's Corps members were tasked with closely monitoring wealthy households related to Han Laogua, preventing them from sneaking out of the island and traveling to Niangzhou County to inform Han Laogua. On New Year's Eve, Heizi was guarding the house of the rich peasant Han Bala from morning to afternoon in Yadzuwan. Han Bala was a distant nephew of Han Laogua. He had been selling fish at the fresh fish market in the county town. Before the winter, Han Bala's mother passed away, and he returned home for the funeral. He happened to catch the Dongjiang Provincial Party Committee and the Military Region Hospital secretly stationed on Phoenix Island, cutting off all communication and contact with the county town, and he had not returned since then. Although Han Bala was just a small businessman, and he didn't usually get too close to Han Laogua, He was, after all, a relative. To prevent accidents, the Armed Forces Committee sent the Children's Corps to monitor Han Bala's house. It was almost dark when Heizi was replaced from the sentry post by 2 other Children's Corps members. He dragged his red-tasseled spear home. Although the sky had cleared, the temperature was still very low. The snow that had fallen a few days ago had not completely melted, and many houses on the island still had thick snow piled on their roofs. The road was hard. Heizi had just taken a few steps when he ran into a patrolling People's Liberation Army team. They marched in neat steps, passing through the village. Heizi stepped aside, waiting for them to pass. Watching the imposing lineup, he felt envious. Walking forward, he saw the 2 grinning stone lions in front of Han's compound. When Han Laogua lived inside, there was always a big wolfhound squatting at the door, barking wildly with its bloody mouth open as soon as it saw someone approaching. 2 People's Liberation Army sentries were standing next to the stone lions, and the bayonets on their shoulders and the 5-pointed stars on their hats shone brightly in the reflection of the snow on the road. Heizi had been on sentry duty all day, and his stomach was hungry. On the way, he thought about what his mother had made for the New Year's Eve dinner. His favorite kelp must be stewed with marrow bones, lotus root soup, tiny silver fish pickled with chili peppers, and steamed vegetables with ground rice vegetables. As he thought, saliva flowed from the corners of his mouth. Heizi walked to the door of his house and saw wisps of white steam coming from the kitchen. His mother was still busy inside, unable to pay attention to him. The house was empty. His father and sister Manzu had not returned. Last night, Heizi heard his parents say that they would invite the leader of the provincial party committee to his house for the New Year's Eve dinner, so he asked, "Sister Bai and Minister Cheng, are they coming too?" His mother didn't understand what Heizi meant, but his sister's face turned red. She pretended to be angry and spat at him. "What nonsense are you talking about? The provincial party committee leaders stipulated that cadres are not allowed to eat at the homes of the masses," Heizi said. "We're a cadres family. What's wrong with that?" His sister no longer argued with him. His mother understood what Heizi meant and said casually, "Manzu, there's nothing wrong with inviting the leader to our house for the New Year's Eve dinner. I'm just afraid that... Will Minister Cheng be willing to come?" Heizi covered his mouth and laughed when his mother used a literary phrase. Heizi saw that his father and sister hadn't returned yet, and he couldn't see the shadows of the leader and Minister Cheng. Could it be that his sister didn't invite them? As he thought, he walked around the house. He was even hungrier and his stomach was rumbling. He ran into the kitchen and said, "Mom, I'm hungry. When will my father and sister be back?" His mother was throwing firewood into the stove, and the pot was bubbling with heat. A fragrance filled his nostrils. "Aren't your father and your sister patrolling the lake? You're already hungry?" his mother said without raising her head. "The leaders are still busy, and they probably won't be able to come for a while. There are sweet potatoes in the bamboo basket. Fill your stomach first." Heizi then took a sweet potato from the bamboo basket and came out of the smoky kitchen, squatted under the eaves at the door, and ate the sweet potato. The sweet potato was cooked by his mother the night before. This morning, Heizi, his father, and his sister brought them lunch. They had cooled down, but Heizi was hungry and ate very well. A few drops of ice fell from the thatched roof onto his head, but he didn't notice. After several days of sunshine, the icicles on the roof had melted entirely. At this moment, from the direction of the east end of the village leading to the dock by the lake, there were several gunshots. At first, Heizi thought it was someone setting off firecrackers, but then there was a burst of crackling gunshots, like fried beans, fast and crisp. It had been a long time since Heizi had last heard gunshots, since the devils had surrendered. He held half a sweet potato in his mouth, stunned. At this time, his mother also heard the gunshots and ran out of the kitchen, asking repeatedly, "Heizi, did you hear it? Is it shooting or setting off firecrackers?" Heizi hesitated momentarily before saying, "Mom, it sounds like shooting." Hearing this, his mother's face turned pale at once. The village began to become noisy. Some people came out of their homes in panic, running around like headless flies. While running, they shouted loudly, "The home returning corps is on the island! Run away!" The shouting was very shrill, like a sharp blade piercing the dark night sky. Then there was the sound of children crying, interspersed with a few barks, coupled with the constant gunshots, making this originally peaceful New Year's Eve suddenly become terrifying. At this time, Heizi saw a People's Liberation Army team running past the door of his house. Their long and short guns were wide open, and the bayonets looked exceptionally bright in the night. They ran very fast, flashing past the village road and disappearing into the darkness in a blink of an eye. A moment after the team passed, a team of guards escorted a few people out of Han's compound in single file. As they drew closer, Heizi noticed that the people in the middle were the leaders who had held a meeting at his house after arriving on the island. Heizi also saw that the bespectacled Minister Chen was walking at the back, carrying a shotgun in his hand. They had agreed to invite them to his house for New Year's Eve dinner, Heizi thought blankly. The guards escorted the leaders to the village entrance. Not long after, his father and sister returned home. His mother was anxiously pacing around the house, wringing her hands in agitation. Seeing them come back, she hurried to meet them. Before she could ask anything, his father said thoughtfully, "Han Laogua brought the home returning corps to the island. Our troops are blocking the enemy at the village entrance, but the disparity in strength between the enemy and us is too great. I'm afraid we won't be able to hold on for long. Han Laogua is ruthless. You and Heizi must also hide. Hurry up and go to Xiaolong Mountain with the old neighbors. What about you? Don't worry about me. I have to lead the militia to cover the leader's retreat. The New Year's Eve dinner is ready. Won't you eat a few bites?" His mother's voice was crying. "The enemy's guns are already pointing at my head. What New Year's Eve dinner are you eating?" With a sinking face, his father said, went into the kitchen, took a few sweet potatoes, put a few in his arms, handed the remaining to his sister, picked up the Hanyang-made rifle that he never left, turned and left. His mother took half a step towards his father, then stopped, turned her face to look at his sister, and asked, "Manzu, what about you?" "The people from the Women's Federation and I have to work with Bai Shui to transfer the wounded soldiers from the military region hospital." His sister grabbed his mother's hand and said, "Mom, quickly take Heizi and retreat with the folks." After speaking, his sister reached out and touched Heizi's face and left in a hurry. Only Heizi and his mother were left at home again. The sound of gunfire outside became more and more intense. Probably the People's Liberation Army and Han Laogua's Home Returning Corps had exchanged fire. Suddenly, his mother grabbed Heizi's hand as if she was afraid of the cold, holding it tightly as if she was afraid that he would run away. Heizi felt that his mother's hands were cool, like ice. When Heizi and his mother followed the first group of neighbors who evacuated from the village to the Guanyin Temple at the top of Xiaolong Mountain in the west end of the village, they heard the gunfire gradually move from the dock on the east side of the village to the village. The sky above the village was constantly lit up by the dazzling light of the bullets, like setting off rockets, illuminating the whole night. The vermilion door of the Guanyin Temple was tightly closed, and the monks had already fled. People had no choice but to squeeze at the temple door, waiting for the second group of old neighbors who evacuated from the village. The surroundings were dark, and everyone was close together, unable to see each other's faces. Due to nervousness, people's breathing sounded very heavy, and even each other's heartbeats could be heard. Heizi held a red-tasseled spear in one hand and gripped his mother's clothes with the other, trying to stick out his chest like the People's Liberation Army soldiers. But his heart was also beating very fast, as if it was about to jump out of his chest. At this time, Heizi's father led a few militiamen to escort the second group of neighbors who evacuated from the village to the top of the mountain. It was too dark, and Heizi didn't see his father, but only heard him shouting in a hoarse voice, "Everyone, cross over the mountain. The militia has arranged boats by the lake. Someone will be there to meet you and transfer you to Jianzhou Island." People were silent and followed the militiamen down the mountain. "It's too dark. Everyone holds hands and walks one after another, not falling behind. His father stood next to the retreating team, constantly exhorting everyone. When Heizi and his mother walked to his mother whispered, "Aren't you coming with us?" "The military region hospital hasn't withdrawn yet. I have to go back and help Manzu and Comrade Bai," his father said. "The Home Returning Corps has hundreds of people, several times more than us. The comrades of the guard company have retreated to the village and can't hold on for long. You guys hurry down the mountain. It will be troublesome when the enemies catch up." At this point, his father reached out and touched Heizi's face. "Heizi, take care of your mother." After speaking, he led a few militiamen and ran back to the village at the foot of the mountain. Heizi and his mother followed the crowd from the top of the mountain to the foot of the West Mountain and saw several boats berthed by the lake. People boarded the boats in order under the direction of the militiamen. Several leaders boarded a boat from the other side of the mountain under the protection of the guards. At that time, before the boat had left the shore, Han Laogua's Home Returning Corps had already surrounded the People's Liberation Army's guard company and the military region hospital and had chased them down over Xiaolong Mountain. The enemies were getting closer and closer to the lake, and even the sound of their footsteps could be heard clearly. "The Communist Party's big officials and that bunch of poor ghosts are by the lake. Don't let them run away. Hurry, catch an official and reward $5 silver. Catch a poor ghost and reward $2 silver." Someone recognized Han Laogua's voice, and everyone shuddered simultaneously. "Quick, sail!" the escorting militia whispered to the boatmen. The boat hurriedly sailed away from the shore. Almost at the same time, the Home Returning Corps also reached the lake from the mountain. A dense barrage of gunfire poured towards the boat. The guards who were escorting the leaders held their guns and fired back at the enemy. Several leaders also took out their handguns and fired. The bullets whizzed past around the boat and over people's heads. Some people screamed in terror, struggling to escape, forgetting that they were on a ship. The boat shook violently. "Everyone, don't stand up! Lie down!" A tall militiaman lay on the bow of the boat, firing back at the enemy on the shore with the rifle in his hand while shouting. But the enemy's firepower on the shore was too fierce, clearly overpowering the firepower of the People's Liberation Army and the militia on the boat. Heizi's red-tasseled spear was dropped into the water during the rush to board the boat. He and his mother huddled together in the cabin, their teeth chattering uncontrollably. It was too dark to see anything. His mother held the boat's rail tightly with both hands, staring intently at the shore. Heizi understood that his mother was worried about his father and sister. The boat that Heizi and his mother were on still had not sailed out of the enemy's shooting range on the shore. It was spinning in circles in the crossfire and had lost its direction. The night wind blew over from the lake, and it felt like a knife cutting flesh when it blew on the face. Suddenly someone cried out, "Ouch!" as if a bullet hit them. The hull shook violently again. "Oh no! The bottom of the boat has been shot through!" someone shouted. Sure enough, water began to fill the cabin, and it tilted more and more. "It's over! The boat is going to sink!" someone cried out in despair. Heizi heard the gurgling sound of water. He held his mother's hand tightly, and his mind went blank. 3. Veteran. In a few days, it would be the Qingming Festival. Every year during the Qingming Festival, every household on Phoenix Island visits the graves of their deceased relatives. This custom, passed down from generation to generation, is deeply rooted and continuous. Not only people who live on the island all year round, but also those who have long since moved off the island and worked and lived in the county or even the provincial capital for many years, also return to Phoenix Island to kowtow in front of their relatives' graves, light a stick of incense, and burn some paper money. Around the Qingming Festival, the number of passengers from Phoenix Island to the lakeside pier in Nyangzhou County increased sharply. An endless stream of people went to Phoenix Island to worship their ancestors, and the ferry had to add flights temporarily. For the old principal, the Qingming Festival was about paying respects to ancestors and commemorating the People's Liberation Army cadres and soldiers who were buried together with his relatives on Xiaolong Mountain. Every Qingming festival, the old principal would carry a satchel filled with incense, paper money, and candles for decades, and come to Xiaolong Mountain alone, rain or shine, without interruption. Xiaolong Mountain was located northwest of the island, with an altitude of less than 300 meters. The mountain was full of rocks and shrubs. In the early years, a Guanyin temple was on the top of the hill. The fishermen on the island would go to the temple to burn incense every time they went to the lake to fish, praying for Guanyin Bodhisattva to protect them. It was the liveliest place on the island. During the Cultural Revolution, the Guanyin Temple and the Bodhisattva were destroyed by a group of Red Guards from Niangzhou County town, and Xiaolong Mountain gradually became deserted. On the hillside on the northern slope of Xiaolong Mountain was the cemetery for the Phoenix Island villagers and People's Liberation Army cadres and soldiers who were brutally massacred by the landlord's home returning corps that year. Hundreds of tombstones densely covered the entire hillside. Due to the age, the stone tombstones had turned black. Some were incomplete and covered with green moss, and the characters on the tombstones had become blurred and difficult to identify. Initially, a stone wall was built around the cemetery, and a mulberry wood plaque was erected with the words, "Phoenix Island Martyrs Cemetery," inscribed on it by a People's Liberation Army leader who liberated Phoenix Island. But after 30 or 40 years, the plaque had been eroded and rotted away by wind and rain. After being washed away by mountain floods several times, the walls became incomplete and gradually became a mere formality. More and more people on the island went to Xiaolong Mountain to graze cattle and sheep, cut grass, and pick up firewood, and the cemetery was also ruined beyond recognition. Every year on Qingming Festival, when the old principal went to the graves, he always felt a little uneasy when he looked at the devastated cemetery, especially after he had a dispute with village party secretary Ni Changhai about the cemetery not long ago. This unease became even stronger. An uninvited guest came to Phoenix Island 2 days before the Qingming Festival. The person was about 60 years old, very tall, and slightly hunched back. The skin on his face was loose, but from the sculpted face, it could be seen that this person must have been a handsome man when he was young. He was wearing a light gray Zhongshan suit. If it was a dozen years ago, this outfit would have been very popular among city people, especially cadres and intellectuals. Still, in recent years, fewer and fewer people wore Zhongshan suits. Instead, it was the Western suit, which had disappeared from China for a long time. Therefore, this inappropriate outfit seemed a bit eye-catching in the crowd. Moreover, the edges of the sleeves were worn out, revealing uneven threads, and a button was missing. Because the front was open, the white shirt worn inside was exposed. Even more glaring than the Zhongshan suit was the military satchel and canteen that were slung across his body from left to right. In addition, he wore an old military cap that had turned white and a towel was tied to the satchel, like an old soldier who had just retired from the army. Due to the sharp increase in passengers, there were many more stalls at the Phoenix Island dock than usual. There were stalls selling roasted sweet potatoes, roasted salted fish, and sugarcane fruit, and also stalls selling herbal tea, 1 cent a bowl and 2 cents for one with mint sugar. This price was really too cheap for those who came from the city. An old woman with snow-white hair was selling herbal tea. After getting off the ferry, many spent 2 cents to drink a bowl of herbal tea with mint, washing away the heat in their stomachs and continuing on their way. The old soldier also drank herbal tea with mint sugar. He gave the old woman a 1 yuan bill when he paid. 1 yuan was a remarkable amount of money for a small business that only sold 1 or 2 cents a bowl of tea. The old woman's hand trembled slightly when she took the 1 yuan bill. When she finished giving the change and turned around, she saw that the tall old soldier had squeezed out of the bustling crowd and walked away. The old woman was stunned for a long time, holding the 1 yuan bill. She figured this person was probably also returning to the island to worship his ancestors. She would give him the change when he returned to the dock after visiting the graves. The old woman selling herbal tea was a native of Phoenix Island. She had been selling herbal tea at the dock for many years. Adults and children on the island called her Grandma Sha. It was said that she was good at singing and dancing when she was young and played Grandma Sha in the model opera Shajiabang more than 20 years ago. People on the island called her that ever since, forgetting her original surname. There was no one on the island that she didn't recognize. Even if they had left for decades, she could still see some clues from the other person's face. But the old soldier's face was too unfamiliar to her. Grandma Shaw searched her mind repeatedly but couldn't find any familiar shadow. After leaving the dock, the old soldier walked along a rural road full of ruts. As he walked, he looked around, his eyes showing a bit of curiosity, as if a traveler was returning to his hometown that he had been away from for many years, and every plant and tree around him made him happy. Or, like a tourist who had come to Phoenix Island for the first time, the scenery before him made him feel so fresh. He seemed unsure of the destination he was going to, and his footsteps were a little hesitant, stopping and starting. Every time he reached an intersection, he would stop and ask the passers-by or the villagers working in the crop fields on the side of the road. Surprisingly, the old soldier did not take the village road leading to the Xiaolong Mountain Cemetery, but turned onto the small road leading to Phoenix Elementary School. Compared to a month ago, the golden rapeseed flowers on both sides of the road were gone. The rapeseed stalks were full of strings of seed pods that had begun to turn from green to yellow. In a while, the time to harvest the rapeseed would arrive. Above the rapeseed fields, a flock of sparrows chirped and hovered at low altitude, ignoring the scarecrows in the fields, and occasionally flew into the fields to steal the seed pods. Because it had just rained, the dirt road was full of mud. In order to avoid the puddles in the middle of the road, the old soldier walked forward along the weeds on the side of the road. Several times he almost lost his balance and fell into the rapeseed field. Because it was a holiday for the Qingming festival, the elementary school was quiet. A few children were playing shuttlecock and hopscotch games on the playground. The old soldier walked up to the children, bent down, and asked with a smile, "Children, does anyone know where Principal Liu Jiming is?" The children were only concerned with playing the games and ignored him. The old soldier asked again, and then a little girl with braided pigtails stopped the shuttlecock and looked up at him. "Liu Jiming, Principal?" The little girl seemed a little unfamiliar with this name, muttering the name as she thought. "Our school only has the old principal. Are you looking for him?" The old soldier smiled and said, Yes, the old principal. I'm looking for him." Hearing this, the little girl with braided pigtails dropped the shuttlecock in her hand and ran towards an old brick and tile house on the edge of the playground, shouting crisply as she ran, Old principal, someone's looking for you." Before the little girl reached the door, Tian Fang, who was preparing for a lesson, came out of the office and looked at the tall, old soldier standing on the playground. "Are you looking for old principal?" "Yes. Is he here?" "I'll go take a look. The old principal said he was going to Xiaolong Mountain to sweep the tombs this morning. I don't know if he went or not." Tian Fang said, walking towards the low dormitory next to the office with her textbooks in her arms. She had only taken a few steps when she saw the old principal walking out of the low house with a plastic bag in his hand. Tian Fang saw that the plastic bag was filled with incense, paper money, and candles. He was going to Xiaolong Mountain to sweep the tombs. She said, "Old principal, someone's looking for you." The old principal thought it was another student's parent who had come to him about reducing or waiving tuition and fees and didn't pay attention. At this moment, the old soldier also walked to the door of the office. The two people's eyes met. For a full half-minute, the old principal's gaze stopped on the old soldier, who looked more than a dozen years older than himself and was half a head taller. His expression changed drastically. Suddenly, he put down the plastic bag in his hand and walked towards the old soldier. The old soldier also watched the old principal, his face muscles twitching slightly due to his inability to hide his inner excitement, and a glimmer of tears flickered in his eyes. He raised his arms and opened them to the old principal who was walking over. When they hugged each other, the old soldier blurted out 2 words, Heizi, Fang. The old principal also blurted out a sentence, Luo, teacher. The 2 old men hugged each other and cried like children. Tian Fang and her niece Tian Qingqing, who were standing aside, were stunned by this strange scene. 4. Heizi. Not long after the capital of Dongjiang Province, Dajiang City, was liberated, Niangzhou County Town was also liberated. The People's Liberation Army's bandit suppression troops stormed Phoenix Island, destructively wiped out the home-returning bandits entrenched on the island, and cleared out the remnant bandits who had fled to several small islands around Phoenix Island. When Han Laogua fled to Jianzhou Island by boat, he was recognized by the fishermen on the island and arrested on the spot. The newly established Niangzhou County People's Government publicly tried Han Laogua, the culprit of the Phoenix Island massacre. At the public trial meeting, the director of the Niangzhou County Military Control Commission, who was serving as the prosecutor, listed the crimes of Han Laogua's long-term oppression of the people, dominating one side and colluding with reactionary landlord armed forces to kill Communist Party members and cadres and masses in the liberated areas. On New Year's Eve in 1948, Han Laogua led the home-returning bandits to sneak attack Phoenix Island, causing the Dongjiang Provincial Party Committee and the Military Region Hospital on the island to be almost completely wiped out. Dongjiang Provincial Party Committee Secretary Zheng Hao, Provincial Party Committee Enemy Work Department, Deputy Minister Cheng Zuliang, and other leading comrades, as well as most of the medical staff, wounded soldiers, and some cadres and masses of Phoenix Island, were brutally killed by Han Laogua's bandit gang. Most of the Guard Company soldiers also heroically sacrificed themselves in the battle to defend the leaders of the Provincial Party Committee. Han Laogua's bandits cut off the heads of Zheng Hao and other leading comrades and hung them at the entrance of the village to show the public. Phoenix Island Village Party Branch Secretary, Armed Forces Committee Director Yu Dahai, his daugher, Village Women's Federation President Yu Manzu, Military Region Hospital Staff Officer Bai Shui, and other comrades were captured while covering the wounded soldiers and the evacuation of the masses. Han Laogua's bandits cut off their noses, gouged out their eyes, opened their chests and abdomens, and fed them to the dogs. The methods were ruthless. The crimes committed by the home-returning bandit chief Han Laogua against the people are too numerous to write about and are outrageous. It is not enough to quell the people's anger without killing him. On the day Han Laogua was executed, the streets of Niangzhou County Town were empty and the whole city celebrated. The procession followed the criminals, such as Han Laogua, all the way to the mass burial ground in the north of the city before dispersing. Notices of the public trial and execution of Han Laogua were also posted on Phoenix Island. At the entrance of the village office, Heizi read the notice with the big red seal several times. Every time he saw the section that said, Phoenix Island Village Party Branch Secretary, Armed Forces Committee Director Yu Dahai, and Village Women's Federation President Yu Manzu, and his daughter, Military Region Hospital Staff Officer Bai Shu, and other comrades were captured while covering the wounded soldiers and the evacuation of the masses. Han Laogua's bandits cut off their noses, gouged out their eyes, opened their chests and abdomens, and fed them to the dogs. His heart felt like a knife was cutting it. What made Heizi just as sad was that the boat his mother was on when she evacuated with the old neighbors was sunk by the enemy. He fell into the water and was rescued by the militia, but his mother and a few other women and old people were left forever at the bottom of the cold lake. These things were not written on the notice, but were written in Heizi's heart and would never be forgotten for the rest of his life. In the spring of 1950, a land reform work team came to Phoenix Island. The work team consisted of 5 people. The leader's surname was Zhang. He was from the northeast, tall and sturdy, with a full beard, a loud voice, and an assertive, energetic demeanor, albeit one that was a bit impatient. He would throw out the phrase "Mama la gebazi," mothers, at every turn. When dividing the land, a few timid poor peasants and hired laborers were afraid to take it, fearing that the home-returning corps would one day fight back. Captain Zhang repeatedly worked on them, but it was ineffective. He roared with a red face, "Mama la gebazi! If all the poor people are as cowardly as you, even if Han Laogua is dead, his disciples and grandchildren will change the world in the future." Although Captain Zhang had a quick temper, he was very attentive to serving the poor. Less than 2 months after landing on the island, the work team set up a primary school. In the past, there were no proper schools on the island except for private schools. Even if there were schools, the children of poor families could not afford to go to school. The wealthy families on the island sent their children to study in the county town. The primary school was in Han Laogua's old house, next to the village office. When the primary school was first established, there were no full-time teachers. The work team's comrades served as part-time teachers. The work team had to work during the day, so they only had half a day to teach, and the rest of the time was for self-study. The only member of the work team who did not serve as a teacher was Captain Zhang. Captain Zhang's family was poor. He had grazed cattle for the landlord in the village since he was a child and had never read a book for a single day. After the Democratic United Army liberated the Northeast, he joined the army and participated in literacy classes while fighting. Although he recognized a few characters, they were of little use. At the primary school's opening ceremony, many parents of the students attended. A parent asked, "Captain Zhang, you are so eloquent. Why didn't you become a teacher at the primary school?" Captain Zhang said with some embarrassment, "I can recognize my own name, and I'm okay with doing some simple accounting, but teaching people in school? Forget it." He said it humorously and frankly, amusing the adults and children present. "Don't laugh. Even though I, the captain, don't have much education, the members of our work team are much better educated than I am. It's a piece of cake for them to be teachers at the primary school. Take Xiao Luo, for example. Although he is the youngest on the team, he joined the revolution early, attended teachers' college, and published numerous newspaper articles. Heizi was also studying at the primary school. He had learned in a private school and literacy class for a few days before. When the classes were divided, he was assigned to the 5th grade. Only 4 students were in the 5th grade, and the homeroom teacher and Chinese language teacher was Xiao Luo. Xiao Luo was actually Luo Zheng. About 1.8 meters tall, wore glasses, had a parted hairstyle, and a refined appearance. He looked like an educated intellectual. Luo Zheng played the erhu very well. Each member performed a program when the work team landed on the island and held a mass meeting. He performed the erhu solo Naniwan. At that time, Heizi's parents and sister were gone, and he was the only one left in the family. He usually frowned, was taciturn, and had not yet recovered from the grief of losing his loved ones. The work team arranged for Luo Zheng to accompany him from the village office to Heizi's house. Every day after finishing his work, Luo Zheng would tutor Heizi with his homework. After completing his homework, he would chat with him for a while, either telling him revolutionary stories or reading to him. Heizi first heard the names of Liu Hulan and Dong Chunrui from Luo Zheng. Luo Zheng also taught him to study Chairman Mao's Serve the People. Heizi had known from the new 4th Army commander who lived at home during the anti-Japanese war that Chairman Mao was the leader of the Communist Party and all the poor people of China. But this was the first time Heizi had read his article. He read it very carefully. Our Communist Party and the 8th Root Army and new 4th Army, led by the Communist Party, are revolutionary troops. Our troops are entirely dedicated to the liberation of the people and are working diligently for their interests. Comrade Zhang Saide is one of the comrades in our troops. People always have to die, but the meaning of death is different. A writer named Sima Qian in ancient China said, "People are bound to die, some die heavier than Mount Tai, and some die lighter than a feather." To die for the interests of the people is heavier than Mount Tai. To work for fascism and to die for those who exploit and oppress the people is lighter than a feather. Comrade Zhang Seed died for the people's interests, and his death was as heavy as Mount Tai. In the future, no matter who dies in our troops, whether it is a cook or a soldier, as long as he has done some beneficial work, we must hold a funeral for him and a memorial service. This must become a system. This method must also be introduced to the common people. When people in the village die, they hold a memorial service. Use this method to express our grief and unite the entire people. When Heizi followed Luo Zhang and read this passage, he once again thought of his deceased parents and sister, and tears filled his eyes. Teacher Luo, did my parents and sister also die for the interests of the people? Of course! Luo Zhang shifted his gaze from the book and nodded solemnly. Not only them, but Secretary Zhang Hao of the Provincial Party Committee, Deputy Minister Cheng, and Bai Shu, and more than 100 comrades who sacrificed in the Phoenix Island massacre all died for the interests of the people, and their deaths are heavier than Mount Tai. When Luo Zhang said the word Bai Shui, his voice suddenly became much lower, and there was an imperceptible sadness between his eyebrows. Heizi was a little surprised, but soon this sadness disappeared from Luo Zhang's eyebrows. Under Luo Zhang's influence, Heizi's interest in reading became stronger and stronger. Later that day, Heizi was cleaning the room when he saw a book on Luo Zhang's desk, and he casually flipped through it. It was a thin book with the words Communist Manifesto printed on the cover. Author, Marx and Engels, translator, Zhang Da. Heizi opened the book's first page and saw the opening line, "A specter is haunting Europe, the specter of communism." He couldn't help but be curious, but he didn't recognize many words in the book. His knowledge had not yet reached the level of understanding this book. I must recognize more words and read more books. A strong idea suddenly occurred to Heizi. At that moment, he discovered that a photo had been clipped into the book. He curiously picked up the photo and looked at it carefully. It was a photo of a young man and a woman. Both of them were wearing new Fourth Army uniforms. The young man was Luo Zhang, and the young woman was... Heizi felt she looked a little familiar, especially the two shallow dimples on the young woman's face. Wasn't this Bai Shui? Sister Bai? Heizi was stunned. That day, Luo Zhang and the work team comrades visited the poor and asked about their suffering on Jianzhou Island and Wolong Island near Phoenix Island. He returned very late. Seeing that Heizi hadn't slept yet and was holding the book Communist Manifesto in a daze, he asked with a smile, "What? Are you interested in this book?" Heizi didn't say anything. Luo Zhang brought his face closer to Heizi and looked at him carefully. Seeing his brow furrowed, he sat beside him and asked with concern, "Heizi, are you thinking about sad things again?" Heizi didn't answer but suddenly asked, "Teacher Luo, you are Bai Shui's fiancé?" Luo Yang seemed to have been shot by a bullet, and his face suddenly turned pale. How? How did you know?" he asked in surprise. "Sister Bai mentioned you to my sister," Heizi said. "She also had a photo clipped in her notebook." Luo Zhang lowered his head and said softly, "Yes, Bai Shui and I originally planned to get married at the end of that year's spring festival. At that time, I was engaged in underground work in Dajiang City and was suddenly arrested. Half a year later, when I was released from the Kuomintang's Dongjiang provincial prison, I heard the news that the enemy had attacked the Provincial Party Committee and the Military Region Hospital, and Bai Shui." Heizi thought of the song Naniwan that Luo Zhang played. Bai Shui had also sung this song. They both liked this song. Thinking this, tears gradually welled up in Heizi's eyes. After a while, the two people's emotions calmed down. "Teacher Luo, tell me about you and Sister Bai," Heizi pleaded. "Bai Shui and I were classmates at the teacher's college. Bai Shui was 1 grade lower than me. She studied music, and I studied Chinese language. Deputy Minister Cheng was the Chinese language teacher at the school. Bai Shui and I joined the revolution under the influence of Deputy Minister Cheng," Luo Zhang said slowly. "Bai Shui was good at singing and dancing and was the backbone of the school choir. During the anti-Japanese war, Bai Shui and I collaborated on a duet, My Home is on the Songhua River in the Northeast, at a performance commemorating the December 9th movement. That's when we started to fall in love. After joining the revolution, we joined the new Fourth Army together. She worked in the propaganda team of the 5th Division, and I worked in the political propaganda office of the division headquarters. After winning the anti-Japanese war, I was transferred to the city work department of the Dongjiang Provincial Party Committee, and Bai Shui was also transferred to the Dongjiang Military Region Hospital. The opportunities for Bai Shui and I to meet became even fewer. In the summer of 1948, the Dongjiang Provincial Party Committee held a party congress in Niangzhou County. When Comrade Song Chiang-kun, the minister of the city work department of the Provincial Party Committee, attended the Provincial Party Congress, he met Bai Shui, who was doing conference work, and she asked Minister Song to bring me a book. But who knew that Bai Shui would sacrifice herself half a year later? Luo Zheng's voice became low. The oil lamp wick was also about to burn out, and the room became increasingly dim. The shadows of Heizi and Luo Zheng on the wall gradually became blurred. In a few days, it would be the Qingming Festival. The work team organized the primary school students to sweep the tombs on Xiaolong Mountain. Early in the morning, Heizi got up and busied himself alone in the kitchen. Before long, the meal was cooked. They were all common dishes the islanders usually ate during New Year's Eve dinner. Heizi grew up eating meals cooked by his mother. After Heizi was the only one left in the family, he also learned to cook. Heizi put the cooked dishes into bowls and carefully placed them in the bamboo basket he used to dig wild vegetables on the mountain. He also put a few sticks of incense and a stack of paper money in the basket. These were all sacrifices used to sweep the tombs on the mountain. He was about to leave the kitchen with the basket when Luo Zheng came out of the main room. He looked at the basket in Heizi's hand, reached out and said, "Heizi, let me carry that for you." Heizi saw the sad expression on Luo Zheng's face and handed him the basket. When Heizi and Luo Zheng arrived at the village office's entrance, they saw that Captain Zhang, the work team, and the primary school students had all arrived. Everyone walked to Xiaolong Mountain together. During the Qingming season, Xiaolong Mountain was lush and verdant. Spring flowers bloomed in clusters along the mountain road, and butterflies fluttered through the grass, creating a vibrant spring scene. The Guanyin Temple on the mountain had returned to its usual state of bustling activity, once again filled with incense and devout believers. If it weren't for the rows of tombstones densely packed on the hillside, it would be difficult to believe that a bloody massacre had taken place 2 years ago. Captain Zhang led the work team and the primary school students to hold a solemn memorial ceremony before the tombstone. Captain Zhang solemnly announced that a martyrs' cemetery would be built on the hillside to commemorate the martyrs and the people who died in the Xiaolongshan bloodbath. Heizi placed the offerings he brought in front of the tombstones of his parents and sister, then knelt on his knees and kowtowed 3 times. Then he came to Bai Shui's grave, which was only a few tombstones away, and saw Luo Zheng standing there solemnly, with a serious expression and sad eyes. Heizi stared at the words, "Tomb of Martyr Bai Shui" on the tombstone, and knelt with a plop. At this time, he heard Luo Zheng say in a swearing tone, "Bai Shui, don't worry. I will find the traitor who betrayed you." That night, Captain Zhang was assassinated on his way back to the village office after visiting the poor in Yazuwan. Captain Zhang died a tragic death. His head and hands were cut off and thrown into the pond at the head of Yazuwan village and were not fished out until 2 days later. The day after Captain Zhang was killed, Han Bala, a distant nephew of Han Laowu, came to the village office to apply for a pass, stating that he wanted to visit the county town. Since Han Laowu was suppressed, Han Bala stayed on the island and was very active during the land reform. When the island was first established, he took the initiative to donate 10 yuan. Why did he suddenly want to leave Phoenix Island at this critical moment? The village cadres felt that it was a bit suspicious and immediately reported it to the work team. The work team immediately went to Han Bala's house to search and found Captain Zhang's revolver and a bloody hatchet in the cellar. 5. two old men. What does it feel like when old friends, separated for decades, reunite? The boy Heizi of the past was now Liu Jiming, the graying old principal of Phoenix Elementary School. Luo Zheng, once a member of the land reform work team, was now over 60. The former student and teacher had endless stories to tell, reminiscing and reflecting on the present. Tian Fang and Qing prepared lunch using fresh vegetables from the Phoenix Elementary School garden. Luo Zheng ate with gusto, showering praise on every dish. The old principal said, "If you'd come a month or two earlier, you could have had your favorite, smoked pork stir-fried with garlic sprouts." Luo Zheng made a sound of agreement. The garlic sprouts on Phoenix Island are so crisp and tender, they're especially fragrant when stir-fried with pork. I haven't tasted anything like it since I left the island. The old principal said, "Come earlier next year, and I'll personally make you a plate of authentic smoked pork with garlic sprouts." Perhaps not wanting to intrude on the two old men's conversation, Tian Fang and Qing took some food and went to eat in the office next door. "What lovely, endearing girls," Luo Zheng said to the old principal, impressed. "If you hadn't told me, I would have thought they were your daughters. They really look like family." "Ha ha, I like hearing that," the old principal said, beaming. "I wish I really had two daughters like that." After lunch, Luo Zheng rested for a while. When he woke up, he saw that the old principal had prepared several small dishes as offerings and placed them in a bamboo basket, along with incense and candles. He lifted the plastic sheet covering the basket, and his heart stirred. That Qingming festival decades ago seemed to reappear before his eyes. Still these same dishes. "Every Qingming festival, I make these same few dishes," the old principal said. 43 years now, never missed a single one." 43 years. It's all just been a blink of an eye. Luo Zheng sighed. "When I came to Phoenix Island with the land reform work team, I was just over 20. And now I'm almost 70. How old are you now? 50-something? I'll be retiring in a few more years. It's hard to believe that when I first arrived on Phoenix Island, you were just a kid," Luo Zheng said, the wrinkles on his face as fine and dense as pine bark, filled with a sense of vicissitude. In comparison, the old principal seemed much younger. After all, there was more than a decade difference between them. But regardless, they were both men past their prime. As they spoke, the two men left the gates of Phoenix Elementary School. By the time they arrived at the foot of Xiaolong Mountain, the sun was already beginning to set. The two old men entered the hillside cemetery, their pace involuntarily slowing. The wrinkles on their faces tightened in unison like two dried walnuts. Their eyes seemed veiled by a thick fog, somber and heavy. Their steps felt as if they were stuck, each forward movement arduous, as if they were walking through decades. At that moment, their hearts beat in unison. Passing through a bamboo grove, the entire cemetery spread out before them. The rows of gravestones resembled a silent army. Thick moss covered many of the stones, obscuring the names on them. The two old men slowly walked past the gravestones, carefully identifying the inscriptions. Zheng Hao, Li Weidong, Luo Yuan, Cheng Zuliang, leaders, I've come to see you. Luo Zheng softly spoke the names on each gravestone as he passed. Finally, he arrived at Bai Shui's gravestone. He knelt on one knee, caressing the cold stone with both hands, pressing his face against it, and murmured, "Bai Shu, please forgive me. I've only come to see you after all these years. I've been searching for that traitor for 43 years to see him punished as he deserves, but I haven't been able to do it. I'm not content. I have no face-to-face you and the leaders, comrades, and people lying here." As he said this, he gripped the gravestone and began to weep like a child. The wind on the mountain blew, lifting his head of white hair like a pile of scattered reeds. The old principal stood silently beside him, tears streaming down his aged face. Later, they found the gravestone of Zhang, the leader of the land reform work team. "Captain Zhang's death was so tragic." Luo Zheng gazed at Zhang's name on the tombstone, his expression one of sorrow. At the time, no one suspected that Han Balala, who appeared so enthusiastic during the land reform, was actually sent back to Phoenix Island by Han Lagua to lie dormant. We were too careless. His voice was filled with guilt. This cemetery was Captain Zhang's idea. Little did we know before the cemetery could be built, he would fall under the enemy's knife. Luo Zheng's words brought the assassination, which happened more than 40 years ago, back to the old principal's mind. To forget the past is to betray it, Luo Zheng muttered, raising his right hand toward the cemetery in a military salute. The old principal imitated him, raising his right hand in a less-than-perfect salute. It was almost dark when the two old men finished paying their respects and returned to Phoenix Elementary School. That night, in the old principal's simple dormitory, the teacher and student continued the conversation they had started during the day, talking late into the night. The old principal turned off the lights to save electricity, plunging the room into darkness. Huddled under the covers, they sat facing each other on the bed. Luo Zheng lit a cigarette and slowly smoked it. Eventually, the old principal, who hadn't smoked in years, asked Luo Zheng for a cigarette and lit one himself. The two men smoked and talked in the darkness. They couldn't see each other's faces, but felt their hearts were close. Heizi, haven't you ever thought about starting a family in all these decades? How could I not? But I didn't have that good fortune. Did you ever fall for a girl? Tell me about it. What's the point of talking about that at our age? What age? You're 10 years younger than me. It happened decades ago. That year, after I graduated from elementary school, the school was short of teachers. The village also needed someone to take care of the orphans, so I stayed at Phoenix Elementary School as a teacher. I was just 15 then, the youngest rural teacher in the whole township. The county education department assigned a teacher to our school 2 years later. She was 2 years older than me, with short, ear-length hair, wearing a khaki linen suit. At that time, the island had just shown a Soviet film titled The Village Teacher. I thought she looked just like the teacher in that movie. Extremely beautiful. So you fell for her? Not at first. I didn't have the courage. Think about it. She graduated from a provincial teacher's college. She was a city girl with proper training. I only graduated from elementary school. I hadn't left the island more than a few times. How could I dare have such thoughts? But the more I dared not have those thoughts, the more I couldn't erase her image from my mind. I often dreamed of her at night. Then once I went to the county education department with the principal to handle some business. I bought a box of Peacock brand vanishing cream in the county town and secretly gave it to her on her birthday. I still remember when I handed her that vanishing cream box, her face flushed, and she said to me in a low voice, "Thank you, Comrade Liu Jiming." At that moment, I felt thrilled. "Ha ha, you fell for her." Yes, it was the first time I fell for a girl, and it tasted so good. But because it was so good, it was so precious, so short. Don't keep me in suspense, Heizi. What happened later? Later, that year, during the summer vacation, she returned to her home in the county town. A tornado suddenly hit the lake, the ferry sank, she fell into the lake, and her body was recovered 2 days later. Ah, Heizi, you're just too unlucky. What was the name of that rural teacher? Amy. Amy, a beautiful poetic name. I never met her, but she must have been lovely. After Amy died, the county government awarded her the People's Good Teacher title. Later, I had many opportunities to leave Phoenix Island and work in the county town, but whenever I thought of her, I didn't want to go anywhere. I was willing to stay on the island and accompany her for the rest of my life. From then on, you never fell for another girl? Teacher Luo, don't just ask me questions. Tell me about yourself. How have you been all these decades? Are you still alone? Heizi, I swore at Baishu's grave that I would never start a family until I found the traitor. You still haven't found that traitor? No, I found him. Not only did this traitor not receive the punishment he deserved, but because I reported him, I was saddled with accusations and suffered greatly. Do you know, Heizi, I spent 8 years in prison and only got out last year. In the darkness, a long sigh could be heard. The old principal couldn't see Luo Zheng's face, but he could feel his voice trembling slightly like a reed in the wind. A feeling of shared suffering deeply gripped him. The two old men were silent for a long time. The night wind swept across the Phoenix Elementary School playground, causing the plastic sheeting on the classroom windows to rustle loudly. In the distance, the waves of Niangzhu Lake lapped against the shore, swish, swash, a sound rising and falling, like the echo of bygone years.